How's everyone doing? It's Friday night, it's Rise Above. Did anyone say anything about us having a special guest tonight? You know we've got a special guest, right? It's Friday night, it's Rise Above, and tonight we're talking about the occult music industry. The light and the dark. Let's have the trailer for this week's show before I introduce the man that is DJ Mark Devlin. So good we had to play it twice. Okay, so without any further ado, let's invite our very, very special guest to Rise Above this week. Someone that I've known for quite a while, probably over 10 years now. Got a lot of respect for this guy. It's Mr. DJ Mark Devlin. Let's add him to the stream. Where's he at? Let's just have the Devlin chat here. Mark, how you doing, man?
Hello, mate. Good to be back.
Let's turn you up nice and loud. Make sure everyone can hear you or turn you down. I think you have to have the mic super close, Mr. Devlin.
Okay. Hello. How's that?
Welcome back to the Rise Above studio.
Good to be back, mate.
How long since you've been here? It's been a little while now.
Well, when was it? About October, maybe?
October, right in the middle of that crazy thing that we're not going to talk about tonight. You've given me strict instructions, right?
Yeah. I need a night off from all that.
He needs a night off. Mr. Devlin had given me strict instructions. We're not going to be talking about the C word or the V word or anything like that. Let's get everyone in. How's everyone doing? We've got Andy on the sofa. We've got Omar Beats there. We're very pleased to have Mark in the studio tonight. We're going to be talking about occultism in the music industry. And it's something that really, I'm going to say it, it's put you on the map. Talking about this, Mark Devlin, in my opinion, has put you on the map. I would say you are, in my humble opinion, in the top 3 people in the world talking about occultism in the music industry.
Wow. Well, I'm a humble guy, but I'll take that. And if only I'd been as successful as this when I was a DJ. I was trying all those years, just imagine, to make this kind of impact. And it never happened. And I started doing all this work, and as you say, it really put me on the map. And now everyone's heard of me, and I get stopped in the street, and people's kids are like reciting things I've said in my videos off the back of the work I'm doing now. I never would have imagined it would have turned out this way.
It's absolutely awesome. So the book's Musical Truth, Volume 1 out, Volume 2 out, Volume 3, that's in the works right now?
That's right. I'm writing Volume 3 currently. The saga continues. And this one has a slightly different approach in that I've got a lot of theme chapters similar to what I did in the first 2 volumes. But I ended up with a whole load of miscellaneous stories that didn't really fit into any of the chapters in terms of flowing logically.
Okay.
But it was good information, and I wanted to use it. So I've got the chapters punctuated with new sections, which I'm calling sound bites. And it's a way of me bringing in lots of little stories which people will hopefully find interesting and enlightening. And they just kind of sit there as standalone stories in their own right. And so you have a long theme chapter and then a collection of these short stories to kind of break things up. And that's going to be the rhythm of the book. Little
bite-sized chunks, anecdotes, different people within the music industry. Going back decades, there are lots of different aspects to this topic, lots of different stories, lots of different avenues of approach. But what we're talking about basically is occultism within the entertainment industry.
That's right.
And occultism, whether it's the light or the dark side, is something that we speak about regularly.
So just on that note, do you remember Master Lee introduced us to, is it the group, I don't know if you've heard of them, Mark, is it a Black Box, Lance?
Yeah, Black Box.
Black Box.
Right on Time.
Yeah,
that's right.
The Soulful House group from the late 80s, early 90s.
So, Mark, would I be correct in saying that they would be light occultists?
Well, I've never really studied them to any great degree, but I never really found anything nefarious in their output.
Sure.
So Inner Guardians we've got a little video from him to play later on. He actually had an insight with members of that group.
Yeah.
He's an occultist. He studied in these groups for a while. We haven't got him on the panel tonight because of this terrible echo. But he said he actually studied with Black Box. He was at some meetings with those, and they were light occultists. Wow. They believed that they were injecting some sort of positive frequency into the commercial music scene. And I tell you what, that isn't really my genre of music, but what their tunes, I really like their tunes.
And we all know, Lance said to me, when he said Black Box, I was like, whoa. I was like, that's obviously nefarious.
Yeah.
But then you hear the music, and you said you'll know every one of their tunes.
Yeah.
Got them up on Spotify, literally, whilst we were live on the show. I got them, I just put them on, I was like, yes, I know this tune.
Yeah, because we grew up listening to
Yeah,
them.
yeah, exactly. It's like all the 90s
back
and
to
the 90s.
89.
Yeah, back to 89.
Back to
I'm just going to
89,
turn
yeah.
me and Andy PG down because I don't want Mark to be too quiet. Let me just turn that one down.
But yeah, I wonder how many others these days would be, putting out a light occult frequency or vibration as opposed to negative, because there's a lot
Who are
of
the
negative.
Not a whole lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, who are the light occultists nowadays? Who's not on the dark occultist gravy train?
Well, in terms of corporate-owned artists, there's very few, if any. One of the chapters I've got going in the new book, the biggest chapter, in fact, we said we weren't going to talk about the C word, but it's the response, or lack of it, that various prominent musicians have made to the C word agenda.
Yeah.
And for the most part, most corporate artists signed to the big labels have said absolutely nothing. They've just gone along with
Well,
it.
let's face it. Who has? We can single them out. Who has said something?
I remember,
we
Mark, in one of your latest, rather more passionate videos, you were saying, where is the British bands like The Clash? And where are the
That's right, that's
where
right.
are the hip hop artists? Where are the dingy drum and bass?
Who's the dude
people
out of,
that are supposed to be a little bit edgy and a little bit anti-establishment?
That's
Where
right.
are they? None
Who's
of them
the
are
90s
speaking out.
guy? Ian
Ian Brown.
Stone
Roses.
Stone Roses.
Yeah, he's had a whole lot to say.
He is
there's
a champion.
There's
He's a
few
bona fide
that you,
truther.
that you
Yeah.
would not think of.
But there's
that
very
are
few.
speaking out.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, Snoop Dogg, apparently last week, of all the people, the last person you would expect to not play the corporate game, Snoop Dogg, you've seen this, haven't you?
Took a vaccine.
No, that was from 2012.
Was that from...
That
no.
video was from
Well,
2012.
no
He-
surprises.
So he was sorry to talk about the glorious cure, the V word. He was putting out. It was about the flu.
He was
It
talking
was
about,
about
I
flu
don't want a
shot.
vaccine. I don't
Yeah,
need
yeah.
a flu vaccine. Well, that's interesting. I wonder if he's changed his tune.
Well, more recently than that, in 2016, he was endorsing Hillary Clinton.
Yes,
to
he
be
was.
president.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
He was all
And he
over
was
it.
saying, the time has come for a woman
And-
president. I respect women.
and he also said he would move to Canada if Donald
Do you
Trump got
remember,
elected.
guys, 2020? Do you remember 2020, what he was stirring up with the race pot?
Yeah.
He was stirring up, saying, who were those twins that got dismantled off social media fairly quickly?
What? The
two
Jedwards?
African-American
The
twins.
mixed race ones
Yeah,
that were really
that's it.
southern and they
he
were like
he
real
was calling
right
them
wing.
crackers, and he was
Oh,
saying,
yeah.
this is the cracker crew.
Oh,
and-
that's disgusting.
yeah. Anyone basically who was pro any race and not,
Check this.
not in the division, he was calling the cracker. and
I
there
was in
only
a
few.
discussion the other day. You know about Zubi, the rapper
Yeah,
Zubi.
he was on my podcast
Yeah,
recently.
Zubi's from Bournemouth, right? I've
Okay.
known him before he blew up by telling the truth.
Hmm.
I was in a comment section with a UK rapper who I would class as a race baiter. I won't mention his name. He called Zubi a fascist. He put a little red flag under Zubi's post and said
For-
this.
for
he
what?
said he's. I said, is he a white supremacist as well? He goes, he cozies up to right wing racists and does their work for them. He was basically calling him an Uncle T, which, as you know, is a very derogatory thing to
Yeah.
say to a black person who doesn't have the same views as you. And I pointed that to
Or
this
who
guy.
likes Donald Trump.
Yeah, if you
But
like
I
Donald
think
Trump-
we've all learned that the left and right wing paradigm is a complete fucking load of
well,
bullshit.
I thought
from the last,
everyone had already worked that out already, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
Well, we
You'd
all
think
have
that's
one
a
more.
given, wouldn't
yeah,
we
but
all had a little
even
bit
the
of
best
hope in
us
Donald Trump.
Might have been swayed to one side of that silly argument. Let us know how the sound is, guys. Is everyone sounding equally good? Look at this. We've got a comment. Zubi is amazing. I agree. I think Zubi is amazing. He consistently tells
I
the
haven't
truth.
actually ever heard of his any of his
His
music.
The music
Never.
I heard was very commercial. It wasn't conscious. I would actually say it was very family friendly. His rap music.
like Will Smith's
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like
He
no
was like a
swearing
UK
and-
Will Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah. But big up Zubi. We want to get him on the show. I bet he's good to chat to, isn't he?
Yeah, we had a good chat on the podcast.
He holds the world record for the women's deadlifting still, doesn't he? To
For
this
the what?
day? Women's powerlifting. You
Does
know
he?
about this?
No.
He declared himself, because he's a very strong
He
guy.
did it to
declared
pro- he
himself
did it
a
to
woman,
prove a
and he
point,
broke
did
the
he?
woman's world record on deadlifts. But obviously, he just declared himself a woman. He still holds the
He
world
said he
record.
identifies as a woman and broke the women's deadlift like very easily, and now
That's
still,
how he
still
that's,
actually
that-
holds the
that's
record
what
for
put
it.
him on the map.
He did it to make a point. Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah. Turning
musical
agendas on their head.
musical truth 3.
Yeah.
Let's start delving into this. You're talking about bite-sized stories about different people in the music industry, and we've got some slides, right?
Mm.
And they're in no particular order, right, Mark? We're just going to
Okay.
use these as conversation
Every
starters.
picture is a story.
Every picture is a story. Who's this dude?
That is Africa
I was
Bambaataa.
about to say, I thought it was African Bambaataa. So he's looking like a cross between one of these Hebrew Israelite characters and a Viking.
Yeah. So, just a little bit of occult symbolism going on there.
Slightly.
And this goes back to a story that I carried in Musical Truth Volume 2, actually, looking into the origins of the hip-hop industry. Because you're entrained to think of 3 characters in particular as the founding fathers of hip-hop culture. And that would be Kool Herc, Grandmaster Flash,
Yeah, Flash.
and Bambaataa.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was coming up in the game as a DJ and meeting all kinds of hip-hop heads, it would always be these 3 names that would be revered.
The progenitors.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
people spoke of Bambaataa in very glowing terms. Even though those party records he put out in the early days weren't really hip-hop at all. They weren't rap music. They were more
It's like break-
party,
it's like
dance
break
kind
beat.
of disco music.
Yeah.
Think of Planet Rock. It's considered a hip-hop classic, but it's not really a rap
Isn't it like
record.
boogaloo, that type of music? Like
Yeah,
electric
it's more like
boogaloo,
electro-funk,
Yeah.
isn't it? Anyway, the thing about Bambaataa is that in 2016, 2 guys that have been involved in the Zulu Nation organization that he founded accused him of having sexually molested them when they were minors.
Ooh.
Yeah. And the amazing thing about this story is that it never really went anywhere. And it came out in the midst of all these other stories we were getting about Harvey Weinstein.
I remember
and
it.
Bill
I remember
Cosby
it coming
and-
out, yeah.
Yeah. And there was the Me Too movement around at that time as well. And you would think that as a prominent progenitor of a whole music genre, he would have got thrown under the bus with all these others that were getting exposed at the time. But for some reason, the mainstream didn't touch the story, and the hip-hop press never really went anywhere with it. And the story just fizzled out, as far as I can make out.
I wonder why.
So a few people were on it. There's a researcher by the name of Layla Wills in Chicago. She's a newspaper journalist. And she made a documentary looking into these allegations. And in the wake of what those 2 guys said Bambaataa had done to them, a whole bunch of other people that have been involved in the Universal Zulu Nation came forward as well and said it was a best kept secret within the group
Because-
that Bambaataa was into this type of behaviour.
Are we right in thinking that what he was doing with this Zulu Nation, was it just music, or was he actually involved in this sort of movement of this, the Hebrew Israelite movement? Because he's dressed like them, and I've seen these guys speak, and they are pretty far out there. And I've always thought there's sort of a bit of a cult feeling
Yep.
to this. It's very hierarchical power structured in their organisations. And
Well, the Zulu Nation came out of the gang culture in the Bronx, New York, and it originated out of a gang called the Black Spades, and they were affiliated to the Bronx River Organization.
you wouldn't be allowed to call your gang that anymore. You get taken down.
Exactly.
Sorry.
So the Zulu Nation kind of morphed out of these street gangs, and Bambaataa, at a very young age, he was like 16, and he became head of this gang. And a lot of questions remain about who this guy actually is, because for many years, if you'd looked on Wikipedia, his real name was given as Kevin Donovan. But I think it was Layla Wills did a bit of digging into his background, interviewed a whole load of people in the Bronx that grew up with him, and they told her that his real name is Lance Taylor.
Oh, wow. Another Lance.
Yeah, exactly. Namesake. So now when you go on Wikipedia, they've changed it, and it tells you his real name is Lance Taylor.
We call that Rise Above. We call that editing the timeline. And through the lot, me and Magix talk about this a lot, don't we? I think we've caught them editing the timeline on a number of different subjects across the plethora of the global.
there's a few.
That was Winston
There's a
Smith's
few.
job in 1984.
Yeah.
Editing old news.
Editing old news, but now you don't have to edit old news.
I've been researching a lot of private intelligence companies and private basically psyops for rent, and these private companies based all over the place. There's one in Israel called the Black Cube, which is quite an interesting
Go
name.
figure.
Take the mic
And,
out of the thing, Magic.
Harvey Weinstein, when he got done for his problems, he paid Black Cube a lot of money, and they discredited a lot of his witnesses, and they created stories. A lot of these are like
He obviously didn't pay them
Mossad.
enough, though, did he?
No, obviously not.
Even
there's-
Weinstein
when
couldn't
there's
stretch to that
when
bill.
there's a barrage, there's enough. So there's this crazy world of just private psyops and intelligence, and that makes
That's
it
right.
really interesting.
That's right. But the thing about Bambaataa is because he's got this hidden side to his nature, And because it was said to be a best kept secret within the genre, what he was into and stuff, and because it's kind of fizzled out and never really went anywhere, it's caused me to question all sorts of things about the origins of hip-hop culture generally and how this guy came to be a leading light within it.
Yeah, I had no idea about that. All I'd heard was the recent re-emergence of these accusations.
Yeah.
And that was it. And it didn't get R. Kelly'd. Nothing happened about it.
That's right. There was a guy called TC Islam who was a part of the Zulu Nation as well.
TC Islam, yeah.
And he did an interview with Layla Wills for her documentary.
Right.
And he spilt the beans on some of the stuff that went on in Bambaata's organisation.
Ooh.
Very shortly after that interview, TC Islam gets shot dead in the street.
How long ago was that?
This was probably about 3 years ago.
Oh, really? So this was like I call this like this is obviously PC or BC pre-COVID. That was like Clown World time, the 2016, 17, 18 era when things started to go really weird and all the paedophile accusations came out. So Epstein was 2019, right? Yeah. So the lead up to Epstein. So very interesting. I had no idea that had happened.
Yeah, and the Universal Zulu Nation appears to have been run along the lines of a mind control cult. So it bears all the hallmarks of a cult type organisation.
Okay.
So you get different members of the same family brought into the fold.
Right.
And they would be coerced into only associating with other people within the cult and not having any contact with outside people.
Sounds like Scientology
Exactly.
or any of these extreme Christian or other denomination cults. I've often thought that when I've looked at the Hebrew Israelites, it seems very militant, very, very super structured. Mate, that's a wicked insight. Let's have a look at what we've got next here. Let's put Afro Bambaataa away. Oh, great. Two of our favourite
this is really random.
Holy
We're going all over
Coven
the
witches.
Exactly. Well, the reason I put this story in is because a lot of my research has involved delving into the bloodline families of prominent musicians and celebrities. And when you do that, you discover that none of these people are in the public eye off the back of their talent. They didn't get there through random chance or good luck. They got there because of the families that they come from and who their ancestors were.
Bloodline agents.
Can I just ask you a question there, Mark? So, in respect to the actual bloodlines themselves, are these bloodlines which have always been in the entertainment industry, or just elite bloodlines which so happen need one of their own to be in a position at a certain time, and so they get placed there, regardless of if they're skilled or whatever? I'm aware that you interviewed Beyonce before she was Beyonce, and she was
1998
in Destiny's
when she was 16.
Child.
Boom,
That's right.
Look at that.
Yeah.
You were sat next to her and interviewed her in.
Right. That would never happen again.
No, absolutely. I mean, that was, it's a pretty big thing to. I mean, that was arguably before she was corrupted.
It was. She was a very innocent, sweet girl then. They
Sure.
all were. That's before the
How
industry.
old were you then, Mark?
How old was I? I was late 20s.
Yeah, great time for you, obviously.
Well, the whole 90s was a great time for me, mate.
Sure.
The 90s were cool.
The whole of the 90s, I just had a ball.
Yeah.
Contrast that with life in 2021. It's not quite the same.
No.
Who would have thought? Anyway, we're not talking about that.
But
that
back to
C-word, are we?
the bloodline. So these.
Yeah. So what you said there is correct in that you have aristocratic bloodlines running throughout history,
But not
and
specifically tailored to the entertainment industry.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
okay.
you have different generations of the same family, and they're put to use in prominent positions
Sure.
that influence
They use
society
bastards,
or influence
don't they?
culture.
It's like Game of Thrones. You slide a bastard in with a different name to do your bidding,
Right.
rather than someone that holds your family name. You know. I'm sure you know about the whole Chester Podesta family tree.
Oh,
and when
that
you
was
put
a great
Podesta
dig.
next to Lawrence
Amazing,
Rockefeller,
yeah.
exactly the same. So we could be at a stage where Podesta is a bastard implant of a Rockefeller bloodline, an offshoot. Right, put him there. He's raped someone and created a bastard. Oh well, that's Chester Podesta, and some of these people might not be completely in a state of gnosis about the bloodline that they come from. And
I don't think they are.
I think we see
I don't think
rebellion
they are.
sometimes, like, with what happened to Chester Podesta. Apparently, he was linked in with those other people that were making the documentary exposing the child trafficking. They were all doorknob sacrifices. They all hung themselves very
Like
shadily.
for me, where it gets really quite kind of twisted is where they're using their children to put the, saying they're allocating, right, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. And it's like, if they go against that, they know they're not going to go against that, because a lot of them have been subjected to this trauma-based.
Yeah, well, that's what they do. These roles are set aside for these new generations of important bloodlines, and it's decided you're going to be a famous actor, you're going to be a famous musician, you're going to be a politician, twisted. And so they get trained up. They go to these academies and these foundations. They get the best possible training. So these musicians become really good, and the actors become really convincing, because that's their lifetime role that they've been given. And often they're told from young childhood what they're going to be doing.
Like Mr. Alexander, Lord Potato Head Boris Johnson, he was told he was going to be Prime Minister.
Yeah, his nanny told the story that when he was a young boy, his family used to say, one day you're going to be British Prime Minister, because it had already been decided that was going to be the case.
She knew.
Wolfie says that Ellen DeGenerate, I love that, Ellen DeGenerate, is a Rothschild. Does that make Madonna a Rothschild too?
Well, I've never come across any proof that they're Rothschilds, but they're certainly related when it comes to family bloodlines. So Madonna is a cousin of Ellen DeGenerate. She's also a cousin of Celine Dion, through her mother of French-Canadian descent.
Have you seen Celine Dion's child clothing range?
Yeah.
What's it called? It's called like Mono or something. It's like it's proper satanic, proper demonic human agenda. Oh God.
She's also cousins with Lady Gaga.
What?
And we've got another slide here.
Hold on a minute.
Which I sent you earlier today.
I think
which takes the bloodline even further.
Let me just make sure before I've written it for everyone else. Is that the next slide? Yeah, it is. I put them in the right order, Mark. Come on.
There's another one after that.
Oh, is there another one
with another family tree?
Okay, so we're ready for stage 2 of this family tree. So we've got
the
high priestess.
So these two are cousins.
First cousins, second cousins.
It's often several times removed. You often find they're 10th, 12th cousins, but either way, they all emanate from the same ancestors if you trace the family tree back
sort
far
of the
enough.
same connection you could look between the Saxe-Coburg Gotha and like the Bush bloodlines, because it says here distant cousins via Canadian roots.
Yep.
And then stage 2.
So Madonna's also a cousin of Lady Gaga, and we get these bullshit stories given to us. So
I guarantee Billie Eilish is related to these two as well.
Probably. So Madonna, in the intro to her 1985 Like a Virgin tour video, there's a bit of dialogue there where she says, I came to New York, I wanted to be famous, I wanted to make people happy, I didn't know anyone, I wanted to be famous, I wanted to be happy, I worked really hard, and my dream came true. And she makes you believe that she's the classic rags to riches story, and all you got to do is have a dream and follow it and cross your fingers for good luck, make a few connections, work really hard, and you too can be famous. Doesn't work like that. We know the only reason she became famous is because of who her ancestors were. And it's the same thing with Lady Gaga. We were told that she struggled for years and she was poor for ages because she just so wanted to be famous, and she kept working really hard and eventually she broke through. No, it was always on the cards that she was going to be famous as well.
I always saw Gaga as the replacement of Madonna as she was sort of retiring, because for anyone that's
a new generation of fans.
For a new generation of fans.
I've got a real problem with Lady Gaga, with the Marina Abramovic connection. She has been fully indoctrinated from a young age from these psychopaths. Particularly, we cover this in the Pizzagate videos, and it's the artwork that they were doing.
That seems like ages ago we made those
in the
Pizzagate
forest.
videos.
She got dumped out in the forest, blindfolded and naked, and had to find her way back to a certain point, all for an artistic
MK
experience.
Ultra got written all over it, isn't it?
Literally,
sort of trauma-based shock therapy to break you down, to break down your altars.
And Abramovich is named as a spiritual advisor to Jay-Z and Kanye West.
Yes.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Have you heard the rumour that Abramovich could actually be a daughter of Robert Maxwell? Have you seen the family lineup
I remember when that came out.
Or a transgendered son.
Yeah, transgendered son, because Robert Maxwell had a son that died at some point, and it could be like the
so on Jay-Z,
sister
just as you brought him up there's a picture of Jay-Z and Marina Abramovic, with their kind of grabbing each other's head, almost screaming at each other. It's a very strange picture. I'll see if I can get it up later in the show.
Doing it right
now. And it's a really weird picture of Jay-Z and Marina Abramovic. So there it is. Look.
Share that.
There it is.
Share that,
Look at that weird picture.
Look at this. What? Look at the look
Yeah,
at
look at his
Jay-Z's
face.
face.
It's
Jeez.
very, very strange.
See, I've never discovered anything about Jay-Z's bloodline that makes me suspicious.
I heard he was Kanye's handler.
Yeah, I'm sure he was. But I think Jay-Z is an example of a genuine rags to riches artist.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I think he was
Yep.
he was obviously a crack dealer on the streets of Brooklyn and a budding rapper.
Like
And-
Biggie.
Yeah, like Biggie.
Yeah.
And he had a lot of skills. And these skills were noticed. He had this mentor called Jazz-O that kind of took
That's
him under his
right,
wing
that's right.
and gave him his moniker Jay-Z.
Yeah.
And I think there would have been spotters from the music industry that were keeping an eye out for fresh new
Yeah,
talent.
of course.
They saw that the young Jay-Z had talent and skills, and they thought this guy could be an asset to us.
Well, the
And
thing,
so he was invited into the fold.
I mean, the thing is about these celebrities, Hollywood, it doesn't matter if it's Hollywood or the music industry. If you look just on their social media, you look at how many followers Jay-Z's got, and then you look at how many followers Donald Trump or Joe Biden's got, or any politician. It's way more. They've got way more of a reach than the politicians or people that follow the royal family or anything like that. That's why these celebrities have to be controlled, because they've got such a reach.
That's right.
Well, they're
And-
sort of the new aristocracy.
Can I'm sorry to butt in with your kind of slides here. Just on that note, because it's a good time to ask. I wanted to ask you, Mark, what your thoughts on Eminem are, and if he was the story what we're fed about Eminem, trailer park trash, brought up rags to riches. Do you think that is his story, or was he?
Well, I think it probably was, because again, I've not discovered any nefarious bloodline links with Marshall Mathers. And I think the story that we got in the movie 8 Mile is probably reasonably accurate. He was put under the wing of Dr. Dre.
Yeah.
So Dre was his mentor and his handler. Yeah. And Dre kind of got him into the dark side of the industry because Eminem's first album, although it was a work
Brilliant
of genius,
album, absolutely brilliant
it was a
album.
work of genius, but it was very dark.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And it was but it was presented
Slim
in
Shady.
a humorous style.
Slim Shady
Slim
LP.
Shady,
Yeah.
amazing piece of work. Like I remember listening to that.
His
on a
first
Sunday
three
lying in
albums. To
bed.
me, that's it. After his first
For me, it
three
was the
albums.
first two. What the third album with Superman was okay. After that, for me, it
I
felt
only
like
like
it's a
the
different.
first one myself. But that had Dr. Dre's production all over it.
Yeah.
And it was the first time that people in the mainstream had heard an artist that was getting played on the radio talking about murder, mutilation,
Yeah.
and mayhem and
Killing his
rape and
teachers,
killing
and-
his
yeah,
baby
yeah,
mother.
yeah,
Setting
yeah.
fire to a prostitute in a trailer park.
Yeah.
taking
Yeah.
What is
Vicodin.
it? There's a skit. With it says Eminem got kind of pulled into the music producer's studio or the record label owner and said, "Want to know why Dre's record is so big? He's rapping about big screens, blunts, and
40s
bitches.
and bitches. You're rapping about
homosexuals and
Vicodin.
Vicodin."
Yeah.
and it was really,
I had
really
not-
funny.
I still never seen a Vicodin tablet. I don't even know what that is.
No,
It's tough
it's just a
Vicodin.
sedative, and it's kind of like a
Vicodin.
Valium kind of thing. But it was really. He was like, it was a very new concept, because who else did you have at the time? You had Puff Daddy, which
Yeah.
was all the. Don't get me wrong, I love Puff Daddy and all of his tunes, but that was very much about
I'd
the
heard that
bling,
he-
Biggie had
limos,
just gone.
suits, and you what?
Biggie had just gone. by
Yeah,
that
Biggie had
point.
just gone, but they were still kind of promoting the suits, limos, lifestyle of cash
I
everywhere.
heard that Puff Daddy was a predatory rapist
Wow.
of men.
Oh,
Of
yeah.
men.
Yeah.
You've heard that,
Well, Professor Griff tells a story about Puff Daddy's induction into the industry.
right?
And it was one of these initiation rituals,
Uh-oh.
apparently of the type that is used at Skull and Bones at Yale University,
Yeah.
involving
I've heard
the
this.
initiate lying naked in a coffin,
And
surrounded by his peers, as he pleasures himself and recounts his sexual history. So
yeah, I've heard this. Isn't there a particular?
I bet everyone wishes they could go to one of these Ivy League
Yeah,
universities.
but there's a particular secret society only for African American men.
The Boule.
The Boule.
Yeah.
The Boule. That's it. And when
And
we were talking
Jay-Z
about-
is,
of course, he would be
said to be
Boule,
part of that.
as Kanye would.
Yeah.
So
And Dre as well.
Dre, Will Smith,
Yeah, Puffy.
Puffy, Chris Rock, all of these sort of top level African American.
Oh, I've never heard of this.
It's
The
basically
Boule. It's like a Freemason for blacks.
It's sort of like the Grand Lodge of the Orient. It's not a regular Freemason. It's a particular sect, and I think it's more to do with sort of
Are
like
they building with blocks or are they building with light?
They're mostly people in the entertainment industry and
so
high-level
they're building with blocks.
sportsmen. They're building with blocks, but they're what's the word? It's like alpha. The sororities and the houses. It goes off the Greek secret societies rather than the Scottish or the Yorkshire rite of Freemasonry as we understand it. Right? Am I right or not? Yeah.
Yeah.
The Boule. The Boule.
The Boule. And you've also got the Nation of Islam.
Right.
And the Nations of Gods and Earths, the 5% Nation.
Yeah, I've heard about that, the 5%ers.
And that's very much tied into Bambata as well, going back to the Universal Zulu Nation. There are links there with the 5%ers, which was a spin-off of the Nation of Islam. And these are also organisations that...
That's like Louis Farrakhan.
Farrakhan, yeah.
Who
And
crazily...
it was Malcolm X's organisation in the days of Elijah Muhammad, who was head of Nation of Islam at that time.
What are your
and
thoughts on
Muhammad
Louis
Ali
Farrakhan?
joined that organisation as well.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on Farrakhan?
Farrakhan speaks a lot of truth.
He does, doesn't he?
He does.
He's a bit like Alex Jones. Like, a lot of he says is actually true.
Yeah.
He has his own particular taint on it, which I think might be there or allowed to be there for a reason. That's what I think about Farrakhan.
Yeah, I don't entirely trust him.
No.
But having
Controlled
said
opposition.
that, yeah. Having said that, he's someone that has a great deal of understanding of how the world works and who's really running things.
Yeah, he definitely knows who's in charge of Israel. He's got a very good way of conceptualising that. I think he's known as the #1 anti-Semite in the world. David Icke's like number 2 or 3.
Used to be Professor Griff as well.
Really?
Well, Professor Griff got tainted with the anti-Semite.
That whole anti-Semite label is
anti-termite,
just
anti-Arabic.
ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but
it's just got Alan Dershowitz all over it. That's all he cries.
It's so silly.
Yeah.
It's just so silly. It's just such a misuse of the word. Because if
100% completely
the most
incorrect use of the word.
anti-Semitic state on earth is Israel, because it by default it persecutes
people of the
Semites every
Semitic
day.
Jewish religion have nothing but peaceful.
Palestinians are Semites.
Yeah, of course, but they're nothing but peaceful. The true.
It just means you speak Arabic, as far as I know. You have a Semitic tongue. It's nothing to do with being Whoish.
That's right.
Right, back to the slides. Before we get taken down for talking about those forbidden subjects.
Yeah.
It's Rise Above, everyone.
Sorry, man.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, it's Rise Above. It's Friday night. We've got an amazing special guest in this week. It's Mr. Mark Devlin, and we're talking about the occult music industry. So far, Africa Bambaataa, Madonna.
Can you find the other slide with the family tree on? 'Cause it's amazing.
Okay, I will keep going.
Keep going.
Family tree. Oh.
No.
No.
Oh, well, okay.
Wait a minute. I'll find it. We'll just go back to the studio. There's a family tree. I'll just go back to Facebook and I'll find your slide. Don't worry.
Okay.
So
yeah, this extended family tree, it takes the Madonna links even further, and this was actually published in the Daily Mail several years ago. So it must be true, right? It probably is.
What's the thing called Burke's Lineage, where they show how all of the presidents are all related.
That's right.
So yeah, just carry on, and I'm just
find professional genealogists have evidently done some delving into these bloodlines, and you find that Madonna, one way or another, through cousins several times removed, connects into the Bushes, who in turn are connected to Obama.
Right.
Sotoro, whatever his name is.
Barry Sotoro.
And Big Mike.
Big Mike.
Big
we
Mickey.
love Big Mike and Barry Sotoro in the show.
Go.
That's
the
one we're looking for.
Yeah, this one's crazy.
So,
so it's got George.
I'm just going to pull that over.
George Bush in the centre there.
Wow.
And
Mark
one
Devlin.
way or another, I
Look
mean,
at this.
George Bush is related to John Kerry. I think we all knew that. But according to these genealogists, they're related to Hugh Hefner. There's connections into Princess Diana.
Whoa.
Who's connected to
that's
Madonna
big.
and Celine Dion. Then there's Camilla Parker Bowles. You go back in time to Marilyn Monroe. Bush is related to Dick Cheney, his own vice president. Bush is also descended from Abraham Lincoln.
I'm just looking at some of the other ones.
Who is connected to Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks, Pocahontas.
The
8th great-granddaughter married her granddaughter. Pocahontas is connected to George Bush.
I didn't even know Pocahontas was a real person.
Neither did I. I thought it was just a fairy tale. Wow,
bloody cartoon.
I thought it was, what's her name? Susan Warren. I thought that was Pocahontas.
And then look, Vlad the Impaler. Bloody Count Dracula.
To Lord Sausage Fingers.
Yeah, we did. Lord Sausage
Prince
Fingers.
Charles is very proud of his Dradvacal Transylvanian lineage. I often point this out to people, and they call me a stupid conspiracy theorist, Mark. But as we know, that term is pretty much meaningless nowadays. It's actually sort of a term of endearment.
Well, we're COVID deniers now, aren't we?
Well, those people are just reality deniers. Anyway, you said the C word.
I know, but
put a pound in the
20
swear box, please.
It's 2021,
it's gonna
mate. How can you have a conversation without it?
Mark Devlin, put a pound in the swear box. You said the C word. I cannot believe they've got Vlad the Impaler on this family tree and Lord Sausage Fingers isn't here because he's very proud of being Transylvania.
And you know, the amazing thing is newspapers report this kind of thing. So we saw they reported Madonna is cousins with Lady Gaga and is a cousin of Ellen DeGeneres. And they act like it's nothing unusual, like it's nothing we should be concerned about.
Just by chance.
Yeah, it's pure chance.
Nothing to see here. Move along, peasants.
Yeah, isn't it incredible? Genealogists have discovered these two are cousins.
But I've heard it in the mainstream media on numerous occasions. 53 out of 50, how many American presidents? Sorry, 43 out of 44 American presidents directly related to Charlemagne, Ramesses III, and the UK royal family. I've heard that on.
But it's just a coincidence. And nothing to worry about.
Nothing to worry about. Absolutely nothing.
Like all our prime ministers go to Eton and Oxbridge.
Yeah.
I want to know what's being taught there, Mark. I remember you said in one of your videos, these guys are obviously taught how to
Avoid
evade
answering
questions.
Yeah. Exactly. Like Hancock was asked
Who's
something
it?
like 12 times
Who's it, Mark?
the same question.
I'm really glad I watched an interview you did. I think it was just on your Good Vibrations podcast, actually. The Sheep Farm channel. I've been watching it, and they've done some great digging.
Dom and Chris, these two brothers, they do a great job.
They've done a great job on digging on the politicians. Old Hancock, your witty.
That's right.
And
Valence,
Ferguson, Cummings. Cummings is featured as well.
Yeah.
But particularly there's that. Who was it? I can't remember who was the interviewer when he had Boris Johnson on, and he actually said to Boris Johnson, he's like, he reeled off three things. He said, "You're a bit of a nasty piece of work, aren't you?"
That's right. That's what he
And
said.
then he still slipped his way out of it.
And he accused him of lying.
He did, yes.
He said, when you're a newspaper journalist, you frequently published provable lies.
Yes.
Why did you do that? And Johnson's shuffling nervously in his seat.
Out of it,
I think we should change the subject now. Ask me a different question.
I could argue your Boris Johnson impression as well was next level as well as your. I was really actually in stitches when I heard the game you like to play with your with your daughters.
Chasing my daughter around the park pretended to be Bill Gates.
Yeah.
Come and get your vaccine. You've got to get your vaccine.
Brilliant. But
that makes him scream.
But Boris Johnson, he kind of admitted that because he got accused of having some involvement in getting someone physically beaten up or something like that. And he said
Darius Guppy.
He said he claimed that he humoured his friend at the time because he was in a bit of a state. That's how he slipped out of that one.
Yeah.
But they are trained 100% at these your Etons and your Yale universities to slip right out of questions.
I think it's hardcore compliance training more than anything. Because we asked in the Guardians about this when we're talking about the trivium, the quadrivium, the 7 liberal arts. I was like, do you reckon they teach that to the elites?
Of course they do.
Well,
of course they do.
He was more convinced that you'd actually learn that from members of the family or the institution, and more to Eton and these Yale places. They're going to teach you how to behave,
maybe they wouldn't give it to
how to interact.
Maybe they wouldn't give that information to
all
because
of them. Not everyone at those schools is always going to end up in the position.
No.
It's a holding pen. It's a selection process at the end of the day.
Yeah. Same as things like the organisations like the Church of Satan. It's just a vetting.
Oh yeah, massive congratulations on being taken into the pen of Mark Passio.
Yeah.
We are massive fans of Mark Passio. Let's have a little chat about that.
We had a great chat this week.
I haven't heard it yet. I've heard from Andy and the rest of the team who've been avidly listening to you all week that it's an amazing interview. Tell us about how it went down.
Well, before we went on air, I encouraged Mark to be as explicit as he wished to be.
As you do.
And to express himself as candidly as he wanted to. And I was trying to get him to unload the way he does on his regular podcast, his own shows. Because when he goes on with a guest, he tends to observe etiquette and tone it down a bit and be quite polite. And I said, I don't want you to do that. I want you to just pretend you're on your own show and act the way you would if you were expressing yourself that way. So a lot of people were discovering Mark Passio's work for the first time off the back of the interview that I did with him, because they've discovered my work and now they're looking at my guests. I've been looking at Passio's work for many, many years, probably 8 to 10 years now.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm very familiar with his style and with what he talks about. But I can imagine for anyone encountering him for the first time, it can be a little shocking,
Sort of jumping directly in at the deep end rather than dipping your toes, isn't it, when you listen to Mark Passio?
That's right. And he got very angry and very passionate, as befits his name, on this particular show. And I've had a mixed bag of reactions. Most people are very supportive of what he had to say, and they really appreciated the message. Some people didn't like the manner in which it was delivered. They say he was too angry, he was ranting too much.
Did he do his normal pre-apology that he does at the start of
No, there was
lectures?
no disclaimer.
Oh, right, because, you know, I love Mark Passio's disclaimer, and actually in The Guardian uses a similar one. He's like, what I'm about to tell you, put your opinions of me aside. Whatever you think of me is irrelevant, concentrate on the information.
The thing is with Mark Passio, he really doesn't care about his physical existence. He is purely speaking truth. That's it.
He's not a horizontalist, he's a verticalist.
He doesn't care about anything physical. He is there to speak the truth. That's it. Plain and simple. He says if it comes down to it, he will give his life for truth. That's it.
I feel the same. And I feel like Mark Passio, with his rage, he literally rages at people because he's been explaining to people about natural law.
Anger's a great tool.
And the way to free your mind from slavery. And when you watch the world unfold, like he has, warning people and putting
I'll tell you why
he's
so pissed. I'll tell you why he's so pissed. Is because frequently, every interview he's done in probably the last 5 years, he tells people, go to What on Earth is Happening, go back to podcast number 1, watch from the start. You'll have a good understanding of what I'm talking about. But
yeah, ask them a stupid question.
They pick out the good podcast that they want to watch for entertainment purposes.
It's not entertainment.
Which really isn't his work. Right? You're not going to understand half of what's going on to a proper degree unless you go back to number 1. I said this when I was chatting to Mark before, Devlin, not Passio, before the show here, before we put him in the show. And I said, I went back to the start and I'm on about 107 now of Mark Passio's podcast. And it really does paint a tapestry for what he's talking about. And I'll tell you what, everything he's talking about in about 2012, 2013, 2014 is happening right now. And even worse than what he predicted.
We actually have a question on the screen because people in the comment section want to ask Mark some questions. Buddy, he says Pepe Q. Pepe is the question mark. Did Mark ever interview or meet any open occultists? Any interesting off-the-record truth insights, quadrivium relating to his time in the music industry?
Well, it's probably more a question for Mark Passio than me, but in terms of people that I met in the music industry, I did interview a whole load of artists when I was on the radio back in the 90s and the early 2000s. So I did meet Beyonce, as we said. I met the Fugees. I met Khalees. I met Busta Rhymes.
Wow.
I met RZA of Wu-Tang.
Big names.
Massive names.
Some big names. DJ Premier, Warren G, Missy Elliott, quite a few names from that era. In terms of whether any of them were occultists, I really don't know. I certainly didn't know at the time.
Did anyone you ever interviewed give you the heebie-jeebies? Did you ever think, this person didn't seem like a regular human being? David Icke has talked about meeting Ted Heath, seen his eyes glaze over and things like this. Did you ever experience any weird auras from any of these super famous icons that you'd interviewed and met?
To be honest, no, I never felt unsettled. But back at the time that I was interviewing them, I was fast asleep myself. I was a matrix dweller. I was in a mind-controlled trance. You know, in the 90s, I had so much fun in the 90s because I didn't know any of the stuff that I know now.
You were deep within the simulation, enjoying it.
I was oblivious to truth. And as a result, I was having a whole load of fun and love in life, which I don't do anymore because of the things that I know. But I didn't know these things back then, so I didn't know what signs to look out for. And I've gone back since and listened to some of the stuff that I used to play in the 90s. And I've looked at some of the old record sleeves that I used to pull out of the box back in the day. And I see all this symbolism on it now. And I know what it is now. But I didn't know then. And it was right there in plain sight, staring me in the face. But I had no idea what any of it meant.
Yeah. So I've got a question following on from that. Now that you know what you know and all the work you've done into occultism in the music industry, how many of your heroes and sort of idols or whatever, how many times have you sort of had your heart broken? Because I know recently I've had my heart broken
time and time again.
Time and time again.
And with me, it's not just artists, it's other DJs that I used to look up to. So, you know, Tim Westwood. I used to look up to Tim Westwood. I used to respect him. When he had the Capital Rap Show in the 90s, it was the real deal. That was an incredible radio show, and he was right on top of his game back then.
I used to love Tim Westwood.
Used to. But, you know, look what he's become. He's just become a complete caricature of himself. He's become a complete clown. He's a complete owned asset
Voice
and
box.
stooge of the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Voice box.
And other DJs the same way. I used to respect Pete Tong. I used to like listening to Pete Tong
Yeah.
on Radio 1. But Pete Tong took an MBE the other year, you know. So I lost all respect for him from that.
I'm supposed to be in a 3-way interview with Danny Rampling next week.
Oh, really?
Yes, Danny Rampling is anti-Coviet, and he's
Danny is
speaking
very
out.
awake.
Yes. Jazz from People's Freedom Alliance, big up Jazz in Birmingham, who actually got us Chris Sky. You know, you've heard of Chris Sky? He came on the show a couple of weeks ago. So thanks for Jazz sorting that out. He's going to get me on with Danny Rampling in the week.
It was great. Chris Guy was
Yeah.
great.
You know,
on the show.
Danny Rampling introduced me to the Zeitgeist movie.
Holy shit, shut up.
He's the one that put
is
me
that
on.
Is that the thing that got you into all this, the Zeitgeist movie?
Well,
that
yeah,
really,
it was very early on. It was 2008.
Me too, mate. Zeitgeist did it for me.
I was in an airport lounge in Riga, Latvia, and I played a dance festival. I'd done the hip hop room, and Danny Rampling was one of the DJs in the house room, and we were both due to get a flight back to London. It was bloody Ryanair back to Stansted, so I was surprised to see Danny flying Ryanair. But we were waiting for this flight.
Cheap ass
and-
promoters, probably.
Yeah, on the way over, the plane had a bird strike in one of the engines, and it had mashed up the engine, so the plane couldn't
no.
take off. So me and Danny Rampling were stranded in Riga for 24 hours before we could get home. So we got chatting, and he gave me his hotel room for the night that he'd had booked, and he went and booked himself a new room, which is very kind
What
of
a
him.
legend.
Yeah, and he started talking to me about Zeitgeist.
Uh-oh.
He said, "Have you heard this? Have you seen this movie?" I said, "No, what is it?" And he said, "Oh, you should check out Zeitgeist." So I did when I got home, and blew my mind, you know.
Yeah.
And Danny Rampling put me onto that. Who would have thought?
Yeah, well, when I put onto Zeitgeist, I went round to a friend of Oma Beats, Johnny, who I don't really see that much anymore, went round, and someone's like, "Have you ever heard of Zeitgeist?" I was like, "No." They put it on, and I watched it there and then. It's like 3 hours long. And it was very shortly after 9/11, I watched that. And so many people, that was their switch to never going back to Normie land. Well,
That's right.
you're going to tell me off for saying Normie, aren't you?
We can't. We've got to stop saying that word.
He doesn't like Normie.
What do we call them?
You just can't. There's that. You can't say them.
We banned sheep.
They're our
'cause
brothers
we
and
found
sisters.
sheep was
They're
too.
the same as us. They're just not. It's different consciousness level. We can't separate. We can't use the words.
But what
to
about
separate.
actual NPCs that don't have a soul? Because
That's a different. That's a completely
they're
different.
not
ballgame.
normies. They are
That's a
just
completely
bots.
different ballgame.
Because our other team member is not here. He's convinced that NPCs are actually a real thing. There are people that are walking around that are, you know the term non-player character.
Yeah, background characters.
Yeah, background characters. Yeah. Right. So actually,
Fillers.
lovely little rabbit hole tangent we got into there, guys. That's what Rise Above is all about. How's everyone feeling? We've got almost 190 people tuned in. Is that a record? What's our record?
No, after you got arrested, we had over 250.
That 1 week after I got arrested by the Soviet Union. Right, back to these.
Can't speak at a protest, that guys.
No, you can't tell the truth. It's illegal. £10,000 fine.
Speaking of which, I'd like to take this opportunity to say big up to anyone who's attending the protest tomorrow. in
Yeah,
London.
yeah.
It's going to be a big day.
It's going to be a big day. I tell you what. Let's have a little chat about that.
Berlin style, hopefully.
Yeah. We had I interviewed someone who grew up on the wrong side of the Berlin Wall, Jay. I actually saw Jay
Great,
yesterday.
That was a great interview.
Jay's wicked. He wants to come back on the show.
Yeah,
He wants to
honestly.
talk about he's 54 years old. He grew up in Soviet East Germany on the wrong side
He was
of the Berlin Wall.
24, I think, when he said when the Berlin
Yeah,
Wall
he was
came
actually
down.
trying to escape East Germany the
Yep.
day the Berlin Wall came down. It happened
Yep.
to come down.
Wow.
And I said, "What do you think of the Soviet Union?" I said, "Do you think that's a fitting metaphor? This term that we've coined here."
Yes.
He said, "Do you know what? It is an insult to the Soviet Union to associate what's going on now or what's going to happen." He was like, "It was a great interview." Yeah, Jay will be coming back, guys. We're going to have a follow up of that one.
Really good. Yeah, really
So
good.
protesting tomorrow. Everyone that's going, I would say one thing: don't fall into traps of being agitated by
Keep
people.
it small
Keep it
until
small.
the time is right.
Keep
Yep.
it sensible.
Keeping those bubbles.
Yeah, keeping those bubbles. Follow the protocols. And
We'll
wait.
just say the disclaimer, we're not inciting anything here on the show
No,
this
I
evening.
would never conspire to incite other people to break the Soviet regulations, and I certainly wouldn't want to do that because that inflicts a £10,000 fine, apparently, for about 5 minutes. We'll see how that goes. So, yeah, be good tomorrow, everyone, and don't fall into traps of agent provocateurs and agitators. Right.
That's right.
Inbred satanic whores. Next slide. Sorry. Who is Ireland's Barbara Hewson? What's this about?
Oh, so we're back now to Bloodlines, and
Okay.
I did a bit of digging into Bono. I'm sure we're all big fans of Bono. I'm sure we all respect his philanthropic work that he does with the United Nations and the Gates Foundation.
What do we call him? The Coviet Entertainment Czar.
Yeah, that's right.
Chancellor Bono. Right.
Yeah. So there was a very controversial Irish barrister by the name of Barbara Hewson. And she was controversial for campaigning for the age of consent for adults to have sex with children to be lowered to 13.
Yeah.
And she was also a pro-abortionist and was controversial for
Was
that.
she
Another moral
was she
individual.
in my slideshow the other week about cultural
She
Marxism?
was, yeah,
It
she
was
was,
her,
yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
it?
she was in
Yeah.
there.
Was it?
Yeah, I identified these people that
we
would
did
start pushing
we did a
queer
show,
theory.
We did a show on.
Well, psyops.
Yeah, it was psyops. Yeah, and
I
there was
did,
we had
the cultural
BLM in
Marxist
there,
psyop.
and she was featured in there. Yeah.
Well, she
sure.
died in January, actually. She died of an illness, aged 50-something in January. But anyway, Barbara Hewson turns out to be a cousin of Paul Hewson, Paul David Hewson, which is the real name of Bono. So it's a good example of one branch of that family being put in as a barrister.
Sure.
And then another branch of that family being put in
the
as a
entertainment-
prominent
yeah,
musician.
yeah.
Although in his case, I think he was made famous as a musician so that later in his career he could step into his real work.
Sure.
And it's the
Yeah.
same thing with Bob Geldof.
Gain the
So
publicity.
Bob Geldof was always earmarked to head up the Live Aid and Band Aid projects. He was always going to be that kind of operative for the agenda. But he had to become famous first. So people had to know who he was. So he was put into the Boomtown Rats. He was a bloody awful singer. But he had to become famous as the singer with that band so that when the time came for Band Aid, everyone knew who he was.
Yeah, sure.
And the same thing with Bono. So Bono's now best mates with Bill Gates and Bill Clinton
course he
and
is,
the Pope
cozied
and
up to them,
Obama
yeah.
and Bush and all these people, hanging out with all of them. Because that's his real work, pushing agendas, social engineering, changing society, representing
All by design.
big pharma, big agriculture, big
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
these big businesses.
They're all hitmen to varying different degrees. Like people say, like, "Oh, why'd you go after George Soros and Bill Gates?" Because they're hitmen. One of them is a biological hitman. The other man is a cultural revolutionary hitman. And these lesser agents, like Bono, I would say he is.
He's a bagman, isn't he?
Yeah, he's
I've
not a
been
capo.
watching,
He's a top foot soldier with an army of little celebrities below him pushing the Greta reset agenda. Go on.
I've been watching a couple of your videos with about Jim Morrison.
Oh, yeah.
With his history.
And his dad.
Yeah, yeah, exactly that.
Yeah. His
That's
old man.
A similar sort of thing.
The
from them
Admiral.
times.
US
Golf of
military.
Tonkin.
Yeah, all of those sort of that generation, and they were one generation away from being US military intelligence, pretty much. All the ones that are pushing
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the acid, the flower power.
Yep.
Yeah,
And we still get that now.
psyop after psyop after psyop.
Yep.
Who's this?
So this is a group called The Coup, little known hip hop act. They had this album out in June 2001 called Party Music. And you'll note that the sleeve depicts the events of 9/11 in New York, except this was 3 months before it actually happened.
Wow.
No.
So you had that image in June
Yeah.
depicting events which would happen in September. And if you look there, the front man of the group, Boots Riley, is pressing a kind of remote detonator and setting off the explosions.
So,
Is that like a car stereo?
It's a detonator.
Were,
of
were
some
these
sort.
people not pulled up on this after 9/11?
Yeah, this group and their record label were questioned about it, and they said, "Oh, it's just a coincidence.
Oh, come on.
It's in poor taste." And so they changed the sleeve design, and they put out a new version of it with a cocktail glass with a cherry on top. Party music. That was the innocent version of the cover. But this was an example of predictive programming,
Yes, for
which is
sure.
getting people
100%.
subliminally prepared for what is known to be coming. And they do it through movies, they do it through TV shows, they do it through live events like the Grammys and the Super Bowl show and all this, and they do it through record sleeves. One way or another, most people in society will have seen some example.
An image, some imagery, or
some
something.
image related to
Yeah.
what is known to be coming.
Sure.
And with the current agenda that we're all living through, I'm going into some of the examples of predictive programming
Yeah.
there, and they go into the hundreds, trust me.
Yeah,
It's never ending.
It's almost like a living meme.
Well,
No,
I mean,
how many times this has been
for
imprinted?
what's going on currently, the biggest one for me, the very biggest one, was the 2012 Olympics opening with those dancing nurses, and I mean, what?
Yeah, NHS hospital beds.
So, like, right, I want to know, right, who is the organizer of that?
Boris in the hospital bed.
Who,
you seen that?
Who organised that? Who organised that particular part?
Well,
of
the
show?
director was
I
Danny
wanna know.
Boyle.
Danny Boyle.
Danny Boyle that did Trainspotting.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, why is this not
But
pulled
it's
up?
not
Why
just
is it-
that. In the other parts, it went on for a couple of hours. The part at the start when there's like the green fields and the people dancing and the cows and the sheep.
I can't believe
all
these
of
people
that
are
is
being
from that's biblical.
so out in the open. Like, I know these people.
The whole thing
operate
was
in
an
the
occult
open,
ritual.
but so
Absolutely.
blatantly.
Yeah, Russell Brand as the child catcher. Go figure.
I'm glad you just said Russell Brand because one of our regular viewers said, "Please, can you bring up?" Where is it?
See,
yeah,
what-
please bring up Russell Brand. What is going on with Russell Brand at the moment? He's been making videos about the Great Reset.
Yeah,
He's been
about
talking
Bill
about
Gates.
Klaus Schwab.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still don't trust him though.
No, I don't trust him.
I don't.
Still don't trust him. Controlled
He
opposition.
didn't. I heard he flashed an obey sign
Yeah.
at Katy Perry.
Katy
He used to
Perry.
go out with
Yeah.
a Rothschild. He went out with a Rothschild.
Who was it? A goldsmith, I think.
Yeah.
What? Go into
Jemima
that, Mark.
Goldsmith.
What do you know about that? When he flashed the obey
Yeah,
sign?
well, he was Katy Perry's handler
Yeah.
at the time.
Yeah.
So they often put these people together as a couple.
as a relationship.
And I think when you get
inverted
like
commas.
Jay-Z and Beyonce, for
Sure.
example, I personally don't believe that was a romantic relationship that blossomed the way these things do. They were put together. Number one R&B singer, number one rapper, make them a
Jay-Z's
couple.
punching just a little bit.
Yeah, and he certainly is, yeah. And when it comes to Katy Perry and Russell Brand, they were together for a time as husband and wife, although reportedly they spent no time together. They were often in separate countries. But when they were together, he was fulfilling the role of her mind control handler. And he was flashing up that obey pendant, as
Yeah.
you say. And at that particular time, her mood and her demeanour changed instantly because she'd
Yeah.
been triggered. This was a mind control trigger. So I can't trust Russell Brand. I know he's putting out shows now that appear to be giving us truth.
Correct.
And he
The-
appears
yeah,
to be
appear to be.
exposing Klaus Schwab and
Yeah,
all this.
yeah.
But
Do you know-
that's what controlled ops do, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think he is a purple pill merchant. He is a purple pill merchant. He's for people that don't want to quite really grasp the full enormity of what's going on. Oh yeah, but I'll think about the Great Reset and I'll consider its implications. I'll ponder over a Russell Brand video.
The respectable face of truth/conspiracy issues.
But he's sitting on the fence to such a degree on the... We all know what it is. But yeah, whoever sent it to me, I can't remember earlier on, bring up Russell Brand. That's what we think he's... I would say, I'd call him
Well,
a
I don't
purple-
trust him.
I don't trust him either. I wouldn't trust him as far as I could throw him, to be honest.
Ex-BBC,
He's on the BBC. Yeah, no,
XMTV.
no.
I mean, look at some of Katy Perry's music videos.
Yeah.
Look at
Well, it's full
those.
of pizza imagery,
Yeah,
isn't it?
massively, and the
Pizza bloody everywhere.
cannibalism, and there's Egyptian
Spirit cooking, yeah.
It's Egyptian symbology.
Definitely Abramovichian.
Yeah,
She's
very
right there in
much.
that circle, isn't
Very
she,
much.
Katy Perry?
And wasn't she originally a like a choir girl,
Christian singer.
Yeah.
Yeah, Catherine Hudson,
Yeah.
her real name.
And she got
And she did an interview where she said she wanted to be a Christian performer,
Yeah.
and it didn't work out. So she sold her soul to the devil.
Yes.
And she
yeah,
made it sound
yeah.
like a joke, but no,
We
she
know
actually
that's-
did.
Yeah. That's it.
In a sec, we've got a 6-minute video from Inner Guardians talking about light occultism in the music industry.
Yeah.
Should we take a little break and we'll
Absolutely.
come back with Mark? in like
Quickly
5
on the
minutes?
note of selling your soul. So, what do you think of Liam Gallagher?
I don't entirely trust him either.
No,
He's said
because he
some-
sold his soul originally.
Yeah. Well, there's
Originally.
pictures. There's pictures of Liam flashing up the old devil horns.
Yes, there is.
There's
yeah.
pictures of Liam sat next to Jimmy Savile.
There's old pictures.
Old pictures.
So I mean, but he's talking anti-Coviet now.
He is, and I would like to think he's sincere.
Yeah.
I do wonder if many of these artists reach a point where they're no longer considered assets and they're allowed a little bit of freedom to
Yeah.
speak their mind.
However, I'm wondering if, because you didn't hear anything really from the two brothers, for a long time, did we? Maybe they ran out of money and they needed a paycheck. So
Yeah,
if
there's
they're
always
now
that.
controlled opposition, I wonder how many of these artists that we all know and love from the 90s, early 2000s
Right Said Fred.
are running. Yeah, Right Said Fred. But I wonder how much money they've got in their bank accounts these days. I wonder how much they would succumb to an offer, whether it be controlled opposition or To push
Well,
some
yeah,
other
we can
agenda.
only speculate on that,
Yeah,
can't we?
Yeah, that's it. But it appears that they are speaking some truth.
Yeah, we appear to have inner guardians from a secret location. Say hello to the stream, and hopefully we don't have that annoying echo. Inner guardians. All right, he's still mucking around with his mic. Right, I reckon we'll take a little 5-minute break and
Yep,
we'll
we
actually
can do
have
that.
Inner Guardian's video, right? He's prepared a little video for us. It's 6 minutes long, talking about light occultism in the music industry. We're just going to have a little drink and a toilet break, and we'll be back in about 5 minutes with the one they call Mr. Mark Devlin. Hold tight, it's Rise Above.
Hello, this is Lee from the Inner Guardians. I'm going to play a very short clip which was taken from an off-grid chat about the subject of the occult and the music industry, of which I was a part of in the 90s when I worked in close protection, and also being involved with the esoteric groups at that time. This will give you something for the mentation to consider. Please enjoy. Throughout the 90s, I worked very closely with a particular occult group which consisted mainly of musicians, artists, producers. And I got to see firsthand how the lighter occultists could actually inject the truth into music and entertainment. Now, they're up against the dark occultists who will use the very same medium of music. And remember, music is based on the law of octaves, and music is a very important part of the quadrivium, which is the external landscape for the direct realism and truth. So the dark occultists will endeavor to hijack these mediums to implant their distorted dystopian modifications. On the opposing side, you've got the light occultists that will actually manufacture and create music with hidden coded messages in that act as clues and reminders to those that are seeking ascension. So if I give a very brief explanation as to how this works or how this plays out. So you've got the x-axis or the x line, which is the horizontal line. So this is where the dark occultists will dominate. That's the line that they operate on. And then you've got the y-axis, which is the ascendant or the ascension line. But you've also got the z-axis, which is the gateway. It's where the two lines meet. Now this is where the transcending occultist will operate from. So the X line, or the horizontal line, is the wide path. The Y line is the narrow gate. And the Z axis, or Z line, is the junction of the X and the Y, running diagonally, which is the narrow path to escape the 3D realm. Now, we're locked into this game. Now, some will argue and say that we're forced here in some type of slave vessel. Others will say that we volunteer to come here because this is the best way to develop and to format the soul. So when we come here, we enter like a recycling wheel of reincarnation on the X line or the horizontal line. So reincarnation exists on the horizontal line. It's not until we meet the Y line or Y axis or the vertical line that we then go into what's known as eternal recurrence. So if you look at this as like a university or a school of education, but it's a particular school and university for the development of a soul. So we enter the horizontal line in spirit and with essence. And as we recycle, we reincarnate, the spirit actually moves through into another life. But at this point, there isn't necessarily a soul. Now this is partly disinfo that has been given to us through education, through the religious channel. So we come here with spirit, which is breath. So if it breathes, then it has a spirit, which means that the spirit can feed the essence. The essence can then crystallize into a soul with the correct work and the correct knowledge. And this is where the game plays out. So it's a case of the dark occultists will hide the truth and the knowledge, and the light occultists will leave clues. Remember, it's a game, so they'll leave clues for ascension. But you need to be aware, you need to be relatively awake and have enough focus and intent to be able to identify and pick up on these clues. Now, because music is part of the quadrivium, so it's part of the external landscape along with other factors like mathematics, geometry and cosmology. So this is what the construct of the matrix consists of, and this is the material that we have to work with. Now, in order to develop a soul, we need to feed it. And to feed it, you need to have the correct type of nourishment and food. With regards to food, people think that food and energy is just from what you physically eat, like the matter that we physically eat, when in actual fact, there's different types of food that are very important for consumption, especially for developing a soul. So the first type of food is matter or material food, which will be your vegetables and
Yo, wise words from Inner Guardians. He's so deep. The guy is so deep. Right, I'm just going to chat to you guys for a minute. They're all chilling in the green room. What an amazing guest Mark Devlin is. Lovely to have him along. So, while I'm just interacting directly with the Rise Above family, let me see if I can get spoken word nerd. And StreamYard, I hope you're watching, because we're saying bye to you lot if word nerd is echoing right now. Word nerd, you got the same settings as that amazing sound check that we did the other day. Do you remember how good it sounded in that sound check?
Should do.
Yeah. Chill out, Andy PG. I'm just going to chat to everyone about T-shirts for a minute, because people need to get their Rise Above T-shirts right now, baby. Let's get rid of some of these extra cameras we just don't need. Can you hear Word Nerd's got no echo? Welcome to the stream,
No
Word
shit.
Nerd. How you doing, mate?
Whoa, echo free.
Right, Word
Echo
Nerd,
free.
get everything you've got to say for the whole 5-hour stream in now.
Take a seat over here, mate.
I've got a 3.5 word poem.
Go on, do it.
Paul McCartney isn't.
Paul McCartney isn't. That's your 3-word poem.
That's it.
I think is that a segue for what you want Mr. Mark Devlin to talk about in a minute? We can't have Mark Devlin on and not talk about foul McCartney, or Fool McCartney as he calls him. So anyway, a little bit of merchandise talk. This is Rise Above, and in case you didn't know, we sell T-shirts. Not because we're dirty capitalists, it's because people really love our sick T-shirts, and they begged me to start selling them.
Plus, I need a new chair, guys, in studio.
Yeah, right. You know, we've got a crucible here. We've got a sacrificial altar for the rhythm and selection over here. We need to buy Andy PG a new chair, or me a new chair. Andy PG.
Yeah, I get the hand-me-down.
He gets hand-me-down. So these Rise Above Live T-shirts are back in stock. We've got a brand new colour, which is grey, which is not shown here. They're £20 plus postage, and they're super good quality. And remember, we've got the new design as well. The one that I'm sporting right now, it is my signature collection, the whole rabbit. Not the rabbit hole.
What time is it?
What time is it? You know what time it is. It's Rise Above time. Yeah, these ones are £25.
It's raw time.
It's raw time. Inner Guardians, would you care to try not to echo? It'd be great. Because I don't want to have to just finish my StreamYard forever. So yeah, guys, buy a Rise Above T-shirt, support the cause. All the profits go back into upgrading the studio. So each and every week, we have got a bigger table to feast upon the whole rabbit. The rabbit, the whole rabbit, and nothing but the rabbit. And there's new designs coming soon. in the whole Rabbit collection and the Rise Above All Stars. If you would actually wear a hoodie with a sick Master Lee illustration on the back.
Sensei. What does it say? Bottom left, Lance. Apply first principles.
Apply first principles. In the bottom right, it says creator or reactor. I took some of my favourite Master Lee quotes. It's a Rise Above original. Inner stand. Inner Guardians 2021.
Don't understand.
Don't understand. Don't overstand. Inner stand. So yeah, this is some of the merch that's coming soon. Yeah, don't forget we've got stickers, Rise Above stickers
with the QR code on the other ones as well, guys.
This is for putting on lampposts.
So don't forget, guys, when you get a T-shirt as well, you get a sticker. Don't forget.
You get two stickers.
You get two stickers.
Yeah, you get the Holy Baphomet sticker and you get the QR.
Don't forget, guys,
code.
put the one with the QR code somewhere where people are going to see it.
We are going to use their Chinese communist technology against them. We'll use the QR code against them. People go, wow, what's that QR code? They'll
just scan it. Takes them straight to Rise Above News, where it's got all
directly
sorts
to Red Pill Armageddon.
All sorts there.
There'll be
from
more
Antarctica to the occult music industry to Pizzagate, everything's up there.
So how do you get this sick merchandise, Andy PD? We go to the Rise Above livestream at gmail.com. Regular t-shirts £20 and the whole Rabbit signature edition. They're 25. Do you know why? Because I drew it by hand. I drew that myself. We've got Mark Devlin in the studio. Mark, do you want to keep it casual and chill over there with the mic, or do you want to come back over here in the spotlight? Pull that out of the stands. And
whichever works.
Yeah, whichever works. Let's get Mark Devlin back.
What are you comfortable with, Mark?
But it's going to say Mark Devlin under you, if that's all right, Andy PG. So Mark Devlin's on the Rise Above sofa.
So what's with all the rabbits?
Well, the concept which we came up with was every week we sort of do different subjects on here, and we call
we always cover the Soviet Union first. You know, that's what we always cover every week first. Like, we put a slideshow together, and then we do a kind of themed show each week. Obviously, you're our theme. You're our guest this week. Mark talking about the occult music industry, but I mean, we've done Antarctica. We did Bill Gates, the big pharma and vegan
so the idea is,
movement.
Rather than getting stuck down one rabbit hole, I had the concept of presenting the whole rabbit, like the entire rabbit. Yeah. So I started doing some designs based around rabbits.
You know, my daughters wouldn't go much on the picture of the guy holding the white rabbits there, because we got 2 pet white rabbits for him just before Christmas.
I actually
imagine the rumours that's going to start now.
Maybe this one is better for the kids.
Mark Devlin said he's got 2 white rabbits. He's telling you.
He's got a double white rabbit. I reckon this one's better for the kids, personally. So yeah, right. And anyway, enough of my silly T-shirt designs. We've got Mark Devlin in the studio. Let me turn the lights up so we can see Mark over there a little bit better. We've been asked to talk about Brian Harvey. Have you been following the Brian Harvey story, Mark?
He's 17.
I have, yeah.
What are your thoughts about what's going on there, mate?
Well, Brian Harvey seems to be sincere and genuine to me. He seems to be someone that is genuinely in fear of his life for things that he's discovered. The only problem is, in the videos that he's been putting out, he's quite incoherent about everything, and he goes off at tangents.
It's all very hazy.
He rambles, and it's very difficult to keep a track on what he's trying to communicate. He's never actually come out and openly said what it is he's discovered, although he's very strongly hinted that he's seen evidence of pedophilia and child sex trafficking within the music industry. He's certainly called out his old manager of E17, Tom Watkins, who died last year. He was also the manager of the Pet Shop Boys and Bros. And he's had a few things to say about Tom Watkins.
I have wondered if the whole child trafficking, pedophilia, Pizzagate, all of that stuff that's come out like very recently, like in 2020, all the Save Our Children, because everyone's been, you know, the truth movement in inverted commas have been researching that since it came out. But I mean, for the vast majority, people found that out in 2020. I wonder if this is just a controlled opposition. Another, you know, you've got Brian Harvey and people talking about it, and it's just so out in the open now. Or maybe it's along with the agenda to try and normalise it all.
Like a ruse.
Yeah, like a ruse, yeah. Or, you know, like we've got movies like
Turn my mic off, sorry.
Netflix movies like Cuties coming out, or is it just another move to just normalise the whole...
There could be aspects of that going on, but I do think with Brian Harvey that
he's talking the truth.
Yeah. I mean, he went out in the alley and smashed up that gold plaque that he got for E17's album and said, this is what the music industry means to me. Fuck your music industry.
That's probably all he had left in the E17 days. I doubt he's got any of the money, if he earned much at all.
Probably not. But, you know, he's got mental health issues. He's been sectioned a few times. He's living off
God
benefits.
knows what he's been given, yeah.
Yeah, and he tells this story of being taken into a secret room behind the manager's office in a West End nightclub by Daniela Westbrook, who he was going out with in the 90s. They were an item, and she took him to this club, and there was a secret wall, and they went behind this wall, and he says there were a couple of kids that were sat with adults, and there was all kinds of
shenanigans
stuff going on. And he said his mind keeps going back to the image of this young girl that's being seduced by this man in this secret room behind a bloody door, you know.
See, I heard that people were trying to implant memories in his head because he was mentally unstable. I heard people were trying, kind of egging him on, saying, "Oh yeah, don't you remember this? Don't you remember that?"
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of being people around him trying to influence his.
It's a very tangled web. It goes into Bill Mahoney of Pie and Mash films.
Right. Yeah, I'm not
Maloney. Sorry,
I'm not entirely. And he talks about David. They talk about David Icke being involved, and
now Brian's calling out all kinds of names in the alternative scene, like Richie Allen and Brian Garish.
That's right,
and suggesting that they're all part of some mission to bring him down.
What do you think about that, then, Lance?
I think there's probably many things going on at once. With regards to Brian Harvey, I agree with Mark. It looks like, and with what in the comment section, he's trying to tell the truth. He's being targeted. They're trying to paint him. Mental health is the first one to take people down with an accusation of
I'm surprised
sexual,
they haven't sectioned
malevolence. Didn't he do a piss test live on camera to prove that all he'd been doing was smoking weed? Because they're saying, "Oh, you're a cokehead, you're a crackhead, you've lost your mind." And he's like, "Yeah, I have done that in the past, but I think he did a test live. Not like live, but he said, I'm doing this test, showed that he wasn't under the influence of those drugs. I don't know a lot about it apart from what I've been told by Millie,
Magix,
by Omar Beats, who's been following it closely. But it seems like he's being targeted. He seems like there's a lot of Max Clifford agents around him. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's a very ugly, tangled web.
Very shady. Let me try and find some of your excellently prepared slides here. Oh dear. Oh, that's going to bring me on to the next subject of Wiley. Wiley, the leading grime MC. I'm a bit of a fan of Wiley. I love Wiley. Sorry about these videos. I'm trying to get back to Mark Devlin's slide. Wiley, did you see the videos that he put out on Twitter last year?
Yeah, but he's been very quiet of late.
Well, what a surprise. After you say things like that, mentioning names that end in Steen, saying, I haven't been at parties with young girls.
But he's been silenced, didn't he? So you've got to ask how he's been silenced. Has he been silenced with financial gain, or has he been silenced because someone's got something on him, or, there's always or has he just succumbed?
I think he probably just told the truth.
Or has he been threatened?
What was the guy, David Wolf? He said his manager had basically taken 6 million of the revenue from all of his work. He said, those awards I got, I haven't got them.
Just another day at the office, isn't it?
Yeah, just another day at the office. Well, what is it? What's the film? Is it the Public Enemy film where there's a Berg or a Steen behind them, basically just taking all of the money? It's sort of an old story in the music industry, especially in hip hop, anyway. But right. The less said about that, the better. Right, here's the next slide, which we didn't even get to.
The Who, yeah.
The Who, not the Wuhan hoax organisation.
Yeah.
The original Who.
Exactly. So it's all about the lyrics from their song Won't Get Fooled Again. And I included this because it really speaks to the dynamic of social engineering. And this group would have been in a position to know. I personally feel that along with the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and certain other names on the London scene of the 60s, including early Pink Floyd, they were being used as social engineering assets with ties going into military intelligence, the Tavistock Institute and organisations such as this. So they would have known how the whole thing works. And in their song, they say, there's nothing in the streets looks any different to me. Can't see there for you.
Oh, sorry.
And the slogans are replaced by the by, and the parting on the left is now the parting on the right, and the beards have all grown longer overnight. So they're talking about how these scenes that are considered to be grassroots and organic, like the hippie counterculture scene of the 60s, we're trained to think that they just came from the youthful generation of the time wanting to push back against the establishment and express themselves naturally. But actually research has shown that there's so much evidence to prove that these were social engineering operations, and they were deliberately contrived to change societal attitudes and the way people thought about things. And a study of the way this was done in the 60s with the hippie counterculture scene, the whole flower power thing, is a masterclass in the subject.
Sure.
And this lyric speaks to that. The beards have all grown longer overnight. So, you know, fashions, the way people look, are all the products of these social engineers as well, along with music and cultural attitudes and attitudes towards sex and family and all these other things.
I wonder, Mark, who wrote the Who's lyrics? If it was them, or if they, you know, their handed song? Because I wonder how many artists actually write their own content these days. Yeah. Or you know, back then. You know, you never know who's actually.
There was a lot of contention over the Beatles.
Sure, absolutely.
Researchers have been going back and forth and speculating on whether it was possible for Lennon and McCartney to have written so many songs.
Yeah.
Mike Williams, Sage of Quay, did a brilliant presentation on this last year. It's 3.5 hours long.
If it's physically possible for them to
as
do
you
it.
said, Beatles, I randomly threw up this Andy Pandy comment. Alistair Crowley was on the Beatles cover too.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, he was. He was like
Sgt. Pepper, yeah.
Yeah, Sgt. Pepper. Didn't they also
There
have an
was
album
loads-
cover
there was
with loads
loads
of
of people on
dismembered babies?
Yeah, they did. Yesterday and Today. That was a compilation album of previous songs that had come out in 1966, and the original British sleeve for it, which was photographed by a guy named Robert Whittaker, an Australian photographer, had the Beatles in butcher's smocks,
That's it.
covered in dismembered babies
Yeah.
with
Fetuses.
bits of meat hung over their shoulders.
It looked
what
like a
was the
Chinese
explanation
organ
for that
factory.
Back then, what was the explanation?
It
for
was in the midst of the so-called avant-garde scene of the 60s, which was supposed to be pushing the artistic envelope as far as possible.
Postmodernism,
Right,
yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, under artists,
That's what we were talking about in the
Yeah.
psyops.
Yeah.
So you can get away with all kinds of things
because it's just
under that
artistic
label.
Yeah.
temperament.
It's
Yeah.
just art.
That's how
Yeah.
we've got to the stage now where someone like
Marina
Marina Abramovich
Abramovic,
can call
precisely.
themselves an artist.
Precisely.
Yeah, you know, what
And
did
then
we
she
cover?
gets taken with
I'm
Bill
doing
Gates.
I'm doing exactly the same as occult practices, devil worshipping, spirit cooking, but I'm only doing it as art because
That's
I'm
it.
not putting the intention. She actually admitted.
She
yeah, go
actually
on.
said live on an interview. She said, "Yes, okay," because she was asked, "Okay, what you're doing is black magic," and she said, "Well, yes, kind of, but it's what environment you're creating which makes it dark black magic.
Just artistic.
So this is artistic temperament. You know, if you're doing it in a ritualistic,
You know,
temperament, then
Elton
it's-
John is a collector of what people would consider to be pedophilic art.
Yes.
No surprises there.
Pictures depicting
Yeah.
young children having sex. But because that's art, he's able to get away with it. And reportedly, he's travelled around the world with it in his luggage, and he gets pulled over and they question it, and he says it's just art. It's art. And so he's allowed to proceed. And Elton John and his partner David Furnish were allowed to adopt 2 baby boys a few years ago, despite the fact that Elton John is a stated occultist, and he's got a house full of occult books, dark occult books, and he collects pedophilic art. But apparently that wasn't a problem in those 2 being vetted and considered appropriate for adopting 2 baby
It's
boys.
absolutely fine. The same as like Woody Allen. Didn't he end up marrying
Woody Allen.
his stepdaughter, who he first met when she was 12
I've got to.
or something like that?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Am
will,
sort of roughly right
just
there?
interject, right? And I'm not defending these people's behaviour whatsoever. I'm just saying, Mark, in your latest Mark Passio interview, you asked Mark Passio if you could have one message to Bill Gates, what would it be? And the first thing he said, he paused for a second, the first thing he said was, your parents did a number on you.
Your parents were garbage.
So I wonder how many of these people's parents did a number on them. Because can we actually
Well, all of
blame
them,
them?
probably.
Yeah, more
Can-
often than
Can
not.
we blame them? You know, fully blame them. Obviously, we can blame people for their actions, but can we fully blame them if they were mind controlled and subliminally, trauma-based mind control, whatever it is? Can we fully blame them if they're acting in this way?
Well, you
If
make an
they haven't
interesting
been
point.
healed?
And it goes back to the earlier comment about Boris Johnson when he was a young lad,
young boy.
was told he was going to be Prime Minister one day. So you could make the argument that, he had no choice, he was just born into it. But again, I'm sure Mark Passio would say that if you are putting harm into the world, and if you are taking away people's rights and freedoms,
Natural law, you're breaking natural law.
people who just wanted to be left alone, who were doing no harm, and you came into their world and through coercion and violence attempted to take away their rights,
Regardless of what you've been exposed to,
Yep.
yeah?
then you have to be put down. You have to be
Held accountable.
stopped and held accountable,
Yeah.
held in full judgment for those actions. It doesn't make a difference whether you were mind controlled into doing it. It doesn't make a difference if you were blackmailed into doing it.
Sure.
You're still putting that physical harm into manifestation. And Passio talks often about order followers,
Yes, he
police and
does.
military.
Yeah, the
And he
worst,
says,
the worst.
He says that a police officer trying to make the claim that, oh, I did this because I was just following orders.
Doesn't
Someone of
cut
a
it.
higher
Doesn't
rank
cut it.
told me to put this harm into the world. Who bears the most moral culpability out of the person that gave the order and the individual that put it into physical
Person
manifestation?
who took the physical action.
Well,
in
the
the world.
person that actually made it happen bears the lion's share of the karmic judgment.
There we go.
Whether they were coerced into doing it, tricked into doing it, blackmailed into doing it, ordered to do it, doesn't
So-
make a difference.
So I said, was it last week on the show I said this? So what's currently going on now? Okay, we've got, so we call them, Master Lee from Iniganis, he calls them horizontalists. People like your Boris Johnsons and your, just people that just identify with the physical, they're just horizontal.
Hancock and them.
Yeah, they've got no interest in transcending.
Lord Schwab.
So we call it horizontalists. So what's going on now, I would say, is you've got the dark occultists, the dark Luciferians, using these horizontalists to, in their mind, get around natural law. That's what I think is going on. Because, like you said earlier, it's the person who takes the physical action. So, like an assassin, if you hire an assassin to take a murder contract out on someone, they're the ones pulling the trigger. They're the ones that are going to feel the most karmatic effect from the physical action taken in the world. So how many of these artists, musical artists, have been trauma-based, mind-controlled and subliminally mind-controlled? Or,
A lot of them would have been.
A lot of them, but they're still, in my mind, complicit and part of the mechanism.
They're still doing great harm.
Yeah, they're part
and
of the mechanism.
they've got to be stopped from doing that harm
Yeah.
because it's getting into the minds of young people.
Younger
It's-
and younger as
Yep.
well.
It's affecting subliminally the thoughts and the perceptions and the mind states of millions of people around the world and helping to push agendas, evil agendas.
I mean, I was listening to Puff Daddy in the Family when I was 11, like all about the Benjamins. I mean, when I was 11 years old, because my older
Imagine
brother,
what you'd
2
be
years
listening
older.
to now when you're 11 years old.
Yeah.
You'd be listening to Cardi
Oh,
B.
Mark, on
it's
that,
horrific.
what is that? The what is it? Wham, whap?
WAP, wet ass pussy.
What is your opinion on that?
What is it?
The wet
WAP.
ass
The,
pussy.
you know the Cardi B song?
I'm happy to say I've avoided it entirely.
It
That-
was the biggest song of last year.
Yeah.
She won awards for it. The beat was actually superb. It was a very good beat. And it was her and Megan Thee Stallion. And the song is called WAP, Wet Ass Pussy. And it's basically about being a whore.
It's
and
so derogatory
While
towards...
Dr. Seuss was getting banned.
This was
and-
being promoted.
Yeah, that was being held up
Yeah.
as like, just so empowering.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
doesn't surprise me.
But it's satanic.
Well, absolutely.
You know,
we broke
Azalea
down the
Banks
video.
was doing the same thing a few years ago. with
Who,
just-
Azalea Banks?
Yeah, just completely degraded, debased material.
Yeah.
And it was held up.
Was
One
that
of her
two,
tracks,
was that 212?
212,
Wasn't it Jay-Z that found her, though?
probably.
Yeah, I think it was Jay-Z that
And there was a
discovered
reviewer
her.
from The Guardian, this highbrow intellectual newspaper, so-called, who described 212 as artistic genius. Because apparently, that's the measure of a great song these days.
All right, we've been neglecting the fans a little bit here and the viewers. We've got some questions. Can Mark talk a little bit, if he knows, about an artist called Sun Ra, a jazz musician? You ever heard of them?
I have heard of Sun Ra, but I know very little about him/them. So sadly, I can't offer any
Sun
insights.
Ra.
And here's a good one. I want to talk about this. Wu-Tang's connection to the occult. The reason I am sat here is because I'm an MC. The reason I became an MC is because of Wu-Tang. You can see the Wu-Tang memorabilia all signed all around the room. I love Wu-Tang. And they recently broke my heart by promoting mask wearing, Glorious Cure, get your Maxine or else.
All over his social media, he's
Nah.
working out in the gym wearing a mask, deadlift and stuff like with a mask.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason why I used to name my public talks "No More Heroes," because we've just got to let them all go. Because anyone that's in the public eye, anyone who's famous, anyone who's a household name, anyone that people have heard of is controlled and is doing the bidding of their corporate paymasters. And sadly, there are no exceptions. We were talking earlier about whether it's possible that artists reach a point where they're no longer considered important assets or a threat.
Yeah.
And they are allowed to speak their mind a little bit because they're no longer considered to have that kind of influence. But while someone's at the top of their game and has that potential influence,
The reach.
Do you remember that Nas album that Nas made after he'd made Illmatic, all of those big albums, and then he made, I can't remember what it's called, but his whole album was about the global conspiracy, and it was his worst grossing album ever, and he didn't really do a lot after that. Do you remember this album?
Yeah, didn't it come out on the millennium? It was
Yes.
1999.
Yeah, I believe so.
Was it Nostradamus? Was it
No,
love
no.
Nas
It's
stuff.
not Nostradamus. It's actually an album many years after those ones.
Okay.
Oma Beats can help me out on this. Oma Beats told me about this album. I know you're watching the other room. It's a Nas album that was after Nostradamus and Illmatic and his more famous ones. It was all about military industrial. It was very Immortal Technique-ish. It was great, but it flopped. Here's a good question.
Because Nas, sorry, just to interject there, Nas put out a record called Illuminati a few years ago.
Yes, he did, yeah.
And basically, he's trashing the idea that there's this network of secret societies and stuff. And
Oh,
he's
that
just
must have been the one who was redeeming himself to his
Exactly,
masters afterwards.
exactly.
Oh, shit,
Yeah.
I didn't know about that.
So he's saying it's all conspiracy theory and don't believe everything you hear on the internet.
What's
And
that?
that smacks of him being pulled back into line
Yeah.
and told to do that in punishment for having spoken freely on the previous one.
I've seen that happen. Here's a question from Raman the Writer. Raman the Writer, we are fully aware you made a £5 super chat last week, and Oma Beats forgot to do your request. So we owe you one, Raman the Writer. Why are musicians obsessed with Crowley, Mark Devlin?
I don't entirely know why they are. It's just the music industry is run by dark occultists.
I wouldn't say.
I've
I
got a
would
theory.
argue it's
I-
not just musicians that are obsessed with it.
It's the entertainment industry.
It can be other types of celebrities,
political as well.
but there are more musicians than any other type of celebrities that appear to be obsessed with
Okay.
the occult teachings of Aleister Crowley. And many of them have been very open about it, such as Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin, David Bowie, Elton John. Jay-Z even wore a "Do What Thou Wilt" sweatshirt with that famous Crowley phrase.
Thelema is his ideology. Is that what it's called, Thelema?
Thelema, yeah.
Yeah. I've got a theory about this. The way that I conceptualise it, the reason that Aleister Crowley is at the top of the pyramid on the Beatles album and he's looked upon... What I think he is, I think he's sort of... how shall I say it? He's the messianic archetype of the dark occultist cult that proliferates the entertainment industry particularly, whether that is the media, music, film, television.
One of his field.
Yeah, because we can talk about different metaphors to describe it. Russian dolls within Russian dolls, a spider's web. There are many different cults and sects, in my opinion, of what we're talking about. But for me, in the entertainment industry, he is looked upon as the Jesus character, because what was the name? Do as thou wilt. Now, what that means is basically you can do what you like, and the natural law will take its place.
Regardless of
But then, well,
It's moral
It's a
relativism.
Satanist
It's
manifesto.
moral relativism.
Master Lee in The Guardian says the teacher of his teacher met Aleister Crowley. Yeah.
Yes.
So I can say the teacher of my teacher met Aleister Crowley. That's quite a cool thing to say, isn't it?
If you want to boast that.
But anyway, he said he met him and he was unclean. He smelt. The understanding in light and dark occultists is that Aleister Crowley came up with a theory, but he didn't really practice what he preached because he just went for pure service to self, which isn't really what he was saying. Like, from my understanding of Thelema, and I'm not an expert on it, is like it's basically natural law. You want to do service to self, or you want to do service to others. Here are the consequences. But he didn't really practice it. He went for the dark side. And I think if we
He
talk
broke
about
natural law.
well, what are the dark occultists doing? They're attempting to sidestep or to subvert the consequences of natural law of karma. That's how
By
we
using these
Attempting to.
horizontalists.
attempting to.
Yeah.
Maybe
think
they have a
they've got
different time span to how we understand it.
They've all got a big shock coming, I think, if they
Yeah.
think they've got themselves off the hook.
Yeah, I think so. I'll tell you what, we've also got some questions that people have been sending into the Gmail.
I've got a question for you.
Go
Mark.
for it.
What do you think about Britney Spears?
Obviously mind controlled.
Yes.
Mind controlled from a very young age.
Yeah.
Born into one of these important families where she was bred for stardom, for fame.
Yeah.
Showed all the signs of breaking her programming at that point where she went into the hair salon, got all her hair shaved off.
Yeah.
Classic sign of the programming starting to wear off. And she had to go back into the lab.
The MK Ultra program.
Reprogramming.
Rehab.
Yeah, back to the mountain.
Yeah. And get reprogrammed and then put out there in the public eye again. We've seen this so many times with artists.
So, I mean, it's quite out in the open about her father being in control of her assets, her finances.
The conservatorship, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is, to me, very odd that would be so public and out in the open, that it's not taboo.
Yeah, there was a legal case involving her family and this guy, Sam Lutfi, who was said to be her manager, but obviously handler.
Wasn't her father trying to pass the powers to him?
They were grappling between them over who should get conservatorship of Britney. But, you know, the important thing here
who should
is
get the
fact
rights to Britney.
who
Who should get the
ownership?
revenue.
the important thing is that it's
Who can
being
extract
argued
the
about
essence?
in the first place.
Yeah, precisely, yeah.
Because they're implying that she's not capable of handling her own affairs.
Yeah.
Why would that be? Because she's been mind controlled to oblivion.
Bartering over an MK-controlled asset. Right, a question on the email from Zia Z, and it's like an essay, but let me just
sure is.
summarise this. A question: can you elaborate on what frequencies are beneficial or harmful in the regards of personal taste in genres of music? We've heard in some points talk about the manipulation of certain frequencies. There's a lot of debate around Hertz being beneficial, like 432 and 528. I've heard about this switch of Hertz that apparently happened. Mark, what is your understanding of this?
Yes, 432 versus 440 hertz.
Right.
432 hertz was the standard tuning pitch for musical instruments, where A equals 432. A is tuned to 432, and all the other notes fall into accordance with that. And that used to be the industry standard several decades ago. But there was a move by the Rockefeller Foundation, reportedly, surprise, surprise, to change the tuning pitch to 440 hertz.
Wait a minute, I didn't know it was the Rockefellers.
No, I didn't either.
Who else would it be?
When did this happen? What year was it supposed to happen?
Well, this was around the time of... There was an attempt to bring it in around about
And Mark,
1917.
is this across the board, every genre?
It's the industry standard in terms of recorded music.
Is
So
that for,
music
like,
that goes out
on the radio?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
So it was introduced around about the time of the Second World War successfully. And so all recorded music that came out on major labels from that point on for a very long time was recorded with 440 as the standard tuning
That's
pitch.
exactly the same time period when the cultural Marxists from the Frankfurt School came over from Germany
With
to
all their
America to start debasing culture straight after
Paperclip.
Second World War.
So 432 is supposed to be a very harmonic frequency. It's used for healing, and musicologists and audiophiles talk about 432 as the frequency that should be used, and it falls into relation to 528, which is known as the love frequency. But 440 is anything but
satanic,
harmonious. It's
It's
discordant,
satanic.
and it puts you in a state of unease.
Yeah.
And it conflicts with the natural rhythms of the body, and just puts you in a state of duress and
So-
unsettled.
Have you noticed, right, the
first thing I need to know is my music made in 440? Oma Beats, is our music made in
So
440 hertz?
have you
or-
noticed, I'd say the last decade, there's been a huge push for this generic auto-tune, press the button. It's kind of a drone. It's not singing, it's not rapping. It's like just almost someone...
As a hip-hop fan, you know what we're talking
You
about.
know exactly what I'm talking about.
Will I Am and those lot.
Yeah.
I think
It's not
started-
even hip-hop, is it?
Yeah,
Whatever
but
else
it's
it
not
is.
hip hop. It's
Drivel.
not. It's not. It's its own entity. Is that being put out on the public deliberately in line with this change of?
For me, as an MC, I see it as this. Now, it is fully possible
To me, it's not creative
become
at all.
a top-level, commercially viable superstar millionaire rapper without having a single ounce of ability to actually rap. Now, back in the 90s, that was not possible. Even people like Mace and crap commercial rappers
Sick.
that people will rinse all day long, they still physically, vocally
Yeah,
had
they were
the
good
ability to
rappers, mate.
rap.
They were good
They could
rappers.
still rap.
Yeah.
These guys now, they actually physically couldn't rap. If you put $1 million in front of
No.
them,
It's all auto-tune.
So-called
it's all,
mumble rap.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's all. But do you know what I mean? It's a very minimal tune put to this drony.
Yeah.
Some of the beats are heavy.
mono,
It's what I call demonic sonics.
It is demonic sonics
because it
sounds.
it just sounds horrific. It
I
sounds
literally heard a freestyle of 3 or 4 of these guys. And
It's
they were
all
big
over
names.
the radio.
Little Uzi,
All over it.
little Badass. They would have stupid names, and I heard them. And the DJ played this song. It was hard drill. It's like a big beat, and it's like bitches that shit in the pram, and the fuck animals did, and all. The only word I could basically sort of decipher was either bitch, nigger, or shank or drugs, and it was like, and everything else was literally just it was pure garbage, and I was like.
straight garbage.
It's not.
I've
That's
not
not
been able to listen to that stuff for years.
It's not hip hop culture. I tell you what, though, there are a few MCs that are doing that style. They're actually sick MCs.
I've got some conscious rap records in my
Yeah, we're
arsenal
really
there.
looking forward to that set. You're going to play about
And,
half an hour.
so-
I reckon he'll end up doing 45 minutes. It's Mark Devlin. You know he will.
And some of those tunes are in the style of all this stuff that One Extra plays now and Kiss FM play
Yeah.
and stuff. But it's incisive lyrics.
Have
It's
you ever heard of a
meaningful
guy
stuff.
called Prof?
No.
Prof. He's to me, he's like sort of like the new Eminem, but he's not new. A little white dude from Minneapolis, from America, and he does the
Oh,
sort
you
of.
played me one of his tunes.
Yeah, his
he's
videos
very
are super
good.
entertaining. He's
Yeah.
he's sort of like he is like, he's not like an Instagram rapper. But, you know, he has millions of views and stuff. I'd never really heard of him until I saw him on YouTube. The guy does that style, but he's actually super duper skilled. I would play one of his tunes, but we just get a copyright strike.
No.
So let me see what else we've got on Mark Devlin's slideshow of the dark occultism in the music industry. Up next, I'll call this out. They lie to our faces, but tell the truth cryptically. For those who are able to decipher the obfuscation. So the nightly news and the proclamations of politicians will be pure deception, and usually a 180-degree inversion of the truth. Wow, this rings true. Whereas it's in what we're entrained to think of as fiction or entertainment that the truth so often lies, albeit concealed with layers of symbolism and allegory. What is that from?
So what?
That's actually an excerpt from my last book, Musical
Wow.
Truth Volume 2, talking about this dynamic of how everything in society is satanically inverted. So these institutions that we're entrained to think of as telling us the truth are actually lying to us. And that which we're entrained to think of as mindless fun and entertainment, such as movies, TV shows, music, that's where the truth lies. But you're being told it subliminally in a cryptic coded way, so you don't realise that's what's going on.
Like a double bluff.
Yeah, well, it's also their way of, as they see it, telling you what they're doing and gaining your tacit approval for it.
Regardless,
Tacit acquiescence, as
they
who
see
was
it.
it said that in the comment section? They nailed it. We speak about this. We always come back to this almost every week, don't we, Andy PG? About the consent and about how these dark occultists believe in one way or another they have to gain our consent.
but it's that's
Always.
their belief.
I think this is
their
well.
belief.
We've talked about
Don't
this.
forget what we're talking about when you get raw, when you get right back to it, as we all know. We're talking about a sun cult. We're talking about a cult that worships the sun, a death cult. But their primary thing is worshipping the sun.
Or the black
That's what
sun.
they do. The black sun, yeah, well, that's what they do. And for those who are able to decipher the obfuscation, they deliberately obfuscate the truth. That's what the media's for. That's what it's for.
Yeah.
But they believe that if they put out the truth, whether it's obfuscated or not, that they're skipping around natural law. But it doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't.
And I can't believe for people who are this intelligent, and don't get me wrong, I've got full respect for the intelligence of these people. I don't agree with what they're doing, but these are very smart people.
I am really
They've got the
blown
whole-
away with how they've
They've
pulled
got the
this
whole
off.
planet wearing fucking surgical masks.
That is a feat.
But they are psychopaths.
Of course, I'm not
They
debating
are
that.
sick and diseased
But
and
they're very
soulless.
intelligent. So, and I can't believe people of that
On an
intelligence.
intellectual, they're intellectually intelligent.
Academically,
they're not
yes.
holistically intelligent.
No, they're not, and they're not spiritual in any way.
Yeah.
I think these horizontalists are more like a machine. This is what I said to my speech.
I can't believe that they're that stupid that they think
No.
they
I
can
don't
avoid
think it's
the
thinking.
natural law of karmatic effects.
I think it's more like a knee-jerk reaction. The reptilian brain works on fight or flight.
Flawed, me, I.
Yeah. I don't think
These
want,
Satanists hate the concept of a creator God. They hate the fact
Because
that
they
they're
want to be
answerable to the
Because they're- yeah,
creator.
that's
because
it,
they
they're
want to be their
answerable.
own gods. And
Because they're accountable.
They carry themselves as if they're their own gods, but they still have this grudging acknowledgement of the fact that they are ultimately still answerable to the one creative force.
Yes, they are.
In the same way that everyone else is. So they try and cheat and trick and weasel their way around it.
We're getting down to business here on Friday night. We're really getting down to business with Mark Devlin in the studio, and it's so true. They're like sat at the poker table, and every time they roll,
I bet Prince Philip.
everything is all in. It's all or nothing, and because they have nothing apart from the blueprint.
How do you think Prince Philip's doing right now?
I'm sure Jimmy Savile's really happy to see him again.
Do you think Diana's getting her own back?
Well,
I'm
I'm
Diana's
sure.
been waiting for this moment.
I think their souls are being cleansed in the birthing chamber.
Or do you think they're back?
Who knows?
Do you think they're back already? Do you think he's
Well, we're
back
assuming
already?
that those skin suits were animated by real sparks of the infinite creator, and they're not an archontic aspect
I
of the
think that
parasitic
skin suit
force.
from Prince Philip could have been a bit upgraded.
There's only so many fetuses you can crack
Who
open
knows
to
anything
regenerate
anymore?
your skin suit. Oh, what a sad day for the Sabbatean Frankist death cult that was when Lord
really
Sausage
was.
Fingers Senior finally officially kicks the bucket.
We were more sad about DMX.
Oh.
I'm surprised. Yes, we were.
Oh,
Yes,
let's
we
talk
were.
about
No,
DMX. We can't.
Shock G of Digital Underground today. Heard about that?
No.
Shock G passed away.
Oh shit! We had a
Mark,
comment
Mark,
earlier.
Yeah, we had a comment. earlier.
200 rappers in
Passed
2020
away
died.
in 2020. 200. Yeah,
Wow.
200 rappers specifically.
If whoever put that
Yeah,
comment earlier on,
whoever that was. At
can
the
we get
start
some
of the show.
background on that,
Be
please?
good to get the names, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
200
so,
rappers.
Black the Ripper.
Black
in
the
there.
Ripper, yeah.
Did we mention that in the last interview? We talk about Black.
I think we did,
You
yeah.
touched
Very
on it.
suspicious circumstances
Yeah,
in Montserrat there.
yeah,
Was that the cannabis activist?
yeah. He was.
He was
the Dank
talking
of England.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Grime MC, Black the Ripper / Samson.
Anti-Covid.
Well, he was
he
actually anti 5G.
Yeah, talking about 5G.
Right. Okay, that was
As the
his-
story goes, he was inciting people to burn down the 5G towers. He was basically saying 5G is frying everyone's molecular structure using the 60 hertz. We're in dangerous territory now. That particular that particular equation that basically shows you that 5G can create corona mass ejections in a human cell. You know about this? Do you know about corona? Have you heard about the coronal mass ejection? It's
Yeah.
Well, apparently, as the story goes, and I've seen very convincing scientific research that shows that 5G, when turned to a certain frequency, can create a small coronal mass ejection within organic cells, which basically creates the symptoms of, guess what? Yeah.
Well, I found it very interesting.
Shit,
that
we
the
could probably get
symptoms
taken
of
down for that. I
guess
hope I used
what
enough code words there.
were present in every single installation of radar, telegraph, every kind of upgrade of the
You've
communication
seen the graph
system globally.
going back 100 years.
Yeah.
Dr. Dolores Carhill shared this, I think.
Yeah,
Going right back to the 1850s when they first installed like radio signals,
Yeah.
up to Spanish flu.
It
And
was
there was
the
an event
same
like that.
symptoms. It's related to radiation
Yeah, so
poisoning.
MERS, SARS, swine flu, bird flu, they are all conjunct with the switch on of 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G. Have you seen this graph?
And always in the year of an American election.
Oh yeah,
But this
a
goes
bit like
back,
the
this
BLM
goes-
graph.
But this goes back.
a massive
this-
spike once every 4 years.
But guys, this goes back right to the installation of the first global communication systems. There was always a pandemic around the
Yeah.
time of.
I'm
Just
almost,
look into
I'm
that.
almost,
It's a whole rabbit hole in itself.
I'm almost tempted to get some of our other slides up from earlier on. Let's see what else Mark Devlin brought along. So there's a little one from Jay-Z. We've covered Jay-Z and Kanye.
No,
Bo-
let's
Bo-
see what,
Society.
let's see what Mark's got to say.
Yeah, no, we've
about,
got some more here.
Okay, so
picture.
this is Robert Johnson.
This one.
Yeah, that's Robert Johnson, the blues musician. And he was really the origin of this idea of selling your soul for fame and fortune. So the idea is that he went to the crossroads, which is supposed to be the point where the spiritual world merges with the physical world. And according to this legend, this fable that's existed, it's a variation on the myth of Faust, the German story of Faust, of this guy that sold his soul in exchange for great worldly knowledge. In the music industry version of it, Robert Johnson wanted to be a very successful blues musician, blues guitarist, and he made a deal with the devil at the crossroads where he was promised great musical skills if he would give the devil his soul. And so that's the way the legend went down, and it's been repeated
He wrote a
throughout
famous
the
song
decades.
about this. Is there like a folk song about this actual happening? About
yeah, there was The Devil Went Down to Georgia, wasn't it? It was a
this is the one I'm
country
thinking
song.
of. Yeah, country
I
song.
forget the name of the artist, but there was a song about this. And Robert Johnson died in very strange circumstances in 1938 on the 16th of August. And the 16th of August turns out to be a pretty unlucky date for musicians because it's the date that Elvis Presley is said to have died, although I don't accept that he did at that time. It's also the date on which Aretha Franklin died. So you've got Robert Johnson, who was known as the King of Blues, Elvis Presley, known as the King of Rock and Roll, and Aretha Franklin, known as the Queen of Soul, who all passed away on the 16th of August, which also happens to be Madonna's birthday.
If In the Guardians was in on the chat, he'd start talking about the playing cards and the occult use of the playing cards. So you've got the king and the queen, 2 kings and 2 queens, all going down on one certain day. So the 4 suits of the playing card. Remember the whole presentation, Andy, that Lee did about the deck of playing cards and the occult meaning of a regular deck of playing cards?
I said to Lance before when I knew you were coming back in the studio, I said to Lance, I really want Mark to take a look at Inner Guardian's work because I really think he would be of interest. With
massive thank you for George that just donated £10 because he really enjoyed the stream. Massive thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. If you want double LMC, you can do this on Super Chat. £10 is super generous, like £1 if you enjoyed the show. A £5, massive. £10, wow. Thank you very much, George.
Yeah, I really think Mark would like Inner Guardian's work.
Yeah, he's.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it. I'll have to take a look.
I'll show you. I'll send you his.
He's been in the shadows for some time.
Yeah, he's a close protection specialist, and he's basically. If you type in this guy's name on Google, it will say he is the godfather of UK MMA. A serious martial artist, close protection specialist, and now he's making videos about how occult knowledge can help us get through what's to come with the Great Reset. So it's very important work from Inner Guardians. What's next with the slides? Selling your soul to the devil. This has been repeated. Bob Dylan, Neil Young, all of the great folk singers talked about selling the soul to the devil, and that's sort of been repeated throughout the music industry.
Yeah.
Rappers talk
this
about it.
This was the origin of the myth.
Right, so that's very interesting. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. Who knew it came from this particular dude? God, it looks a bit like George Floyd. Won't talk about that, though, because that's just boring and divisive. Next. What we got here? Oh, we talked about Bambaataa earlier on.
Yeah.
Okay, so
that's, we can skip that.
We can skip that one. Right, the Beatles. Here is your specialty, and I'm just going to hand this one over to you, Mr. Devlin, because this is what you are known for, talking about the Beatles and Paul McCartney.
Yeah, well, the Beatles were, in my view, a construct of the Tavistock Institute. They were used for social engineering purposes. There are researchers who differ greatly on these viewpoints because the Beatles tend to create great interest among music researchers, more so than any other group. And you have people who make their entire careers off the back of studying this particular group. And many of them stick to the official biography, the official version of events, but the more daring ones go into some of these more occult and esoteric realms. And when you do, you find a whole load of stuff about the Beatles. It's a good friend of mine, Matt Sergiu, runs a blog site called The Occult Beatles. He's a very thorough researcher, and he takes a deep dive into all the symbolism behind the Beatles and all these nefarious affiliations and links. We've got a picture here of them with umbrellas, and they're in a black and white design, which is identified as a mind control trigger, going back into the world of mind control programming. And it would seem that John Lennon certainly was a product of mind control, as we were talking about with other artists earlier. And Yoko Ono would appear to have been put in as his handler, because they had a very strange relationship as a husband and wife. She was a few years older than him, and he used to view her as a mother figure. He used to actually call her mother, because he had some mother issues himself, having lost his own mother at a young age when she was run over and killed by an off-duty policeman, of all things, when he was about 14.
And then he's holding up the black and white. Interesting.
Yeah. So when it comes to Paul McCartney, there's been this music industry myth and legend, very similar to the Robert Johnson one, which has persisted for decades. I remember first hearing about this when I was at school in the 80s. Kids there were talking about it because there was supposed to have been a clue placed on the cover of the Beatles' Abbey Road album, pertaining to the idea that the real Paul McCartney had been killed in a car accident in 1966 and had been replaced by an imposter who's been playing the public role of Paul McCartney ever since. And so this whole area of research is known as PID, or Paul is dead. And it's a very persistent conspiracy theory.
I know your thoughts on this, Mark. From what you've spoken, I'm going to let you say it to the.
My thoughts have actually fluctuated.
I know exactly what you're going to say
over the years. So, with my first book, Musical Truth Volume 1, I addressed this whole conspiracy theory. I went to town with all the clues that have been placed, or are said to have been placed, in Beatles records and on sleeves and things that have been said in interviews over the years, and they all seem to hint at the idea that the guy we have today is not the original Paul McCartney, and that the original Paul did indeed die. Then I got exposed to some alternative theories.
You were on board with that originally?
I was on board with that, yeah. When I first started out in this area of research, I bought that idea. But then I had a whole load of other evidence dumped in my lap that I had to take a look at as an open-minded, critically thinking researcher.
Professional researcher.
I had to take this on board. And people were showing me photographs and video footage that appeared to show that there had been two Pauls. So there were clearly two different guys. But they'd been at all stages of the Beatles' career, kind of fluctuating in and out of the role.
Is it the earlobe or something?
It's the eyebrow.
It's the eyebrow, yeah.
So where I'm at now, and this is what I'll be presenting in Musical Truth Volume 3, is I've revised my standpoint again. Because one thing that bothered me was the fact that there are early photographs of a very young Paul.
That's right.
And he's got a very distinctive arched right eyebrow. And this was a family trait, because the real Paul McCartney's old man, Jim, had this arched right eyebrow. And it got passed on biologically to his son.
Very distinctive.
Yeah. So you got a young Paul McCartney, pre-fame, before the Beatles had broken through, who looks this way. And he looks very similar to the guy we've got today. And it leads me to think that the guy we've got today probably is the original and the real Paul McCartney. However, there was a point in the 1960s and possibly beyond where they inserted another Paul. I don't know why.
So it was kind of a double whammy.
A double bluff.
Yeah, double bluff that he was taken out. The original one was taken out maybe because he wasn't playing ball initially.
Yeah, I don't know what the reason was for putting two in. Maybe it was just a mind game. It was a bloody mind fuck. Maybe they just wanted to see
mockery.
Yeah, satanic mockery, and maybe they just wanted to see if they could get away with it, or maybe it was part of some ritualistic stunt. I really don't know. But there was another Paul, and I think the one we've got there with the umbrella is, as far as I can make out, that is the replacement, the non-real Paul.
Yeah, the imposter.
And yet, most Beatles fans, or people that look into this idea, would tell you that's the real Paul.
That's the original.
And that he was replaced by the guy we have today.
Sure.
But my contention is that is the guy that they inserted, who is not the real Paul, who was put in there as a double. So he was slightly shorter than the one we've got today. He's more
slightly shorter, didn't have the eyebrow.
Yeah, he's more or less the same height as John Lennon there.
Yeah.
And he's got a fatter, rounder face than the Paul we know today. He's got a much longer, thinner face.
Yeah.
And he's clearly taller.
Yeah, because Paul McCartney, he's kind of known for his almost like beaverish features with his cheeks.
Yeah.
You know, he's got those cheeks.
He's got a very distinctive look.
Yeah, he has. Yeah. Very
and when you look back over photographs and video footage from over the years, you do see these two characters. So sometimes it's one of them, other times it's the other one.
But you've nailed it to who's who.
Well, that's the way I'm feeling about it now.
Yeah, sure. I'd say you're right.
Well, it differs. It differs with the viewpoint of various other high-profile researchers.
And again, it takes a real man to come out and say that you changed your mind and
changed my mind on a few things. Changed my mind on Q/Trump in recent weeks.
Oh God, if we want to get into that, I mean the whole Q psyop. Yeah, I mean we covered that in a couple of shows back. The psyops.
Yeah.
Show. I mean, I agreed with you actually, Mark. You were the first person which swayed my mind towards the idea that the Q psyop was to get the huge, vast number of armed, patriotic American patriots to stand down because they thought someone else was doing it and they didn't have to.
Leave the firearms in the cabinet.
Yeah, so that there wasn't this civil unrest. But I mean, I'd have thought when Joe Biden got in and Donald Trump didn't after that huge...
Well, I'm just
I
wondering.
was very surprised.
I'm wondering how American patriots are staying so patient and so placid in all of this. Not that I wish for there to be an uproar and a bloodbath. That's the last thing I want.
Absolutely not. No.
But if they've all been sitting peacefully in platitude at the idea of this Q plan,
yeah. I mean,
how long are they going to continue waiting?
if you look at it, I mean, I looked at. I think Mark Passy did a video. It wasn't one of his. I think it was his last "What on Earth Is Happening" podcast, which wasn't really anything informational about esoteric teachings, but it was more of a rant of him. He had a clown horn there, and he was screaming, saying, "You bobo wearing your mask."
Yeah.
But he was at the point then, which was just way beyond patience with the general public. But
been there myself.
Yeah, I know you had a couple of rants in your car, didn't you?
Yeah.
Recently, Mark.
Well, that original rant in my car really
was
put
that
me
was
on
that
the
you
map.
did an anniversary of that a year
last
anniversary.
weekend. Yeah,
that was
yeah.
right.
1 year on. That wasn't really a rant. I was quite calm on that. one.
Yes, you were. Yeah.
But the
it
initial
funny
one
to
was
do
a
it
rant.
in your car. Yeah.
And it's how I was feeling at the time, and
Well,
it really struck a chord with a lot of people.
You had a lot of plans booked, didn't you? What plans did you have?
Yeah, I was supposed to be on an Australian speaking tour the
That's
week
right.
that
For your book
COVID
launch.
dropped.
Yeah.
I was supposed to be going out there and doing presentations in Sydney, Brisbane and Perth. Got my flights booked. Been looking forward to it for months, planning it for months. I had quantities of books shipped over to Australia, ready for me to arrive.
So a lot of work went into that.
Yeah, and it was the very week that all the COVID bullshit happened that I was due to be travelling. I was supposed to be flying out on the 16th of March. And there was all this noise being made about borders starting to be closed, and this so-called virus was getting all out of control. And I had to make the very difficult decision of whether to travel,
Or stay
but
home
risk
with your
not being
family,
able to
yeah.
get back, or just play it safe, lose all my money, and stay where I was. And there was only one choice in the end. I had to stay where I was.
Of course.
Yeah.
What
so
an absolute fiasco. Imagine that spread over so many millions of people. All of the lost revenue.
everyone's got a story to tell.
all
Yeah.
the lost opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just imagine the mayhem and the chaos and the suffering that's been caused by this stunt. It's just monumental. It's immeasurable. And the architects of this, whoever
Well,
they are, I've got all of that to
you're-
answer for.
you're-
Because that's
I know
all
who
going to
they
weigh
are.
down on them.
Your most
It's Lord Schwab.
you need to, Mark's video. We need to share Mark's video of "We Cannot," or what is it? Title Mark. We do not forgive, cannot forget.
Never forgive, never forget.
Yeah, that's it.
I
Yeah.
agree.
What we don't want is a situation where, if they stay true to their word, they are bloody liars, of course, you can't trust them.
On the
But they've-
solstice,
They've
Yeah,
stated that on the 21st of June, all the restrictions go.
the
I
sun
don't,
cult. Yeah, the solstice. Yeah, sun cult, guys.
I
If
don't
you're
trust
If you're
them.
not awake to it now, the sun cult.
but even if it did, even if these restrictions got removed, the danger is that people will be so relieved that this nightmare is finally coming to an end. They just want to get back to normal. They're prepared to put this last year and a half behind them, just forget it ever happened and get our lives back and move on. That can't happen. Those that did this to us need to be held to account.
Hancock, Whitty, Valance,
I've said
Johnson.
I've
all
said
of them.
that this summer
Traitors,
is
a
absolutely
lot.
crucial, right? Because if what we think is going to happen when on June the 21st they give us our 3 or 4 months of peasant holiday time back when we're not got lockdown, many people, we used to call them normies or sheep. We won't call them that now.
we can't do that.
Those,
We
we're not going
can't,
to.
we
Those
really
people
can't
that
do
haven't
guys.
cottoned on yet, what I fear is that they're going to go back to their 3 or 4 months of COVID peasant holiday, and they'll be so elated, and they're just going to forget what's going to happen, like you just said. But not only that, what will happen again in maybe it'll be October 31st, maybe it'll be the next Hunter's Harvest Blue Moon, or maybe I'll be able to predict it when they do the hard lockdown this year, maybe. But when that happens, I really think that those people will just go into reset. Oh, lockdown again. They won't clock that there's a cycle. And I really fear that if we don't make a change this summer, when we go into that next cycle starts, I think, like what Yuri Bezmenov said in that meme, this process is irreversible. I think many people will be fully converted
People
to
will come to
Coveytism.
accept that every winter now we go into
Yeah, well,
lockdown.
that's what
It will
happens,
just-
isn't it?
And
It'll
guys,
just be accepted.
don't forget, and this is pure speculation, right? I'm purely speculating now.
Everything
What
we've
if-
speculated so far
What
came
if
true.
well, this isn't. I hope this isn't true, but we all know that they're going to try climate change lockdowns, right?
Yeah.
So what if the whole COVID-19 lockdowns were just predictive
Test
programming
run.
to get us ready for that, a test run for that?
I think
and that's going to be the real one.
Well, that's what we said in the Greta Reset.
Yeah.
When we come up with this concept of the Greta Reset, the Great Reset isn't just about finance. It's not just about riding off COVID. It's not just about carbon. It's all of those things being used as an excuse for one thing: totalitarian control.
Mark, can I ask you a question? I know you didn't want to talk, but we're already on it. Right, so
Code words, please.
all these people have now showed their hand. Yeah, the dark occultists have showed their hand, whether it's through Boris Johnson, Hancock Whitty, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, whoever. They've showed their hand now, and it's not getting... You can't put the cat back in the bag, okay?
Yeah.
We know that. But we all know that people like Boris Johnson, Hancock Whitty, they're going to take the fall for it. But does that really matter? Truly matter if some physical beings take the fall for it? Because really, the true people responsible are still there lurking in the background. And if this doesn't work, the COVID-19 thing, and they have to take the fall for it, so be it for them. Because they're just going to lurk in the background and prepare something else. Do you think it really matters whether Boris Johnson, Hancock, Whitty take the fall and are held accountable? Because the real people responsible, and I don't even think
That's
people
the
like
same as
Klaus
this
Schwab
question here.
are
It's like-
responsible. I don't think they're responsible. He's just a mouthpiece, same as Bill Gates, just a mouthpiece. The true ones responsible. We don't know who their names are. We don't even know what they look like.
Even Lord
And
Schwab
they're
is an
still
employee.
going to be lurking there when these people do, eventually take the fall.
Yeah. But we know where they've wanted to take things. As you say, the cat is out of the bag now. It ain't going back in anytime soon. And the likes of us that have researched this for years, we know where this is all headed. It's just happened a lot quicker than many of us expected. We knew what the New World Order master plan was. We've got it expressed now as the Great Reset and
Agenda 2030.
Agenda 2030.
Agenda 21, yeah,
It's all headed to the same place,
Documented.
which is totalitarianism, as you say, top-down, complete
Operation
control.
Lockstep, all of it, yeah.
Yeah. And I really don't feel they're going to be able to succeed now, because it's just they've shown their hand too much. Too much has been revealed.
Do you think they were too hasty? Do you think they needed another 20 years of programming?
Absolutely, yeah. I've heard it suggested that this agenda was, well, it's there in the name, Agenda 2030.
And they brought it
everything
forward.
they've done in 2020 was intended to be done in 2030, but they felt they might not have that 10 years, so they had to go all out and bring it in 2020.
Wait a minute. Are you trying to suggest that Lord Schwab has been too ambitious?
Well, he is 83. Maybe he thought he wouldn't live to
Lord
93.
Schwab's 83.
Yeah, I don't think it looked. He's just
I didn't
a
realise he was
mouthpiece.
83.
He's
I thought he
just
was
a
like-
mouthpiece.
Well, he
Same as-
drinks a lot of.
If we know
he drinks a
their
lot of.
names-
He's on your Soros.
If we know
yeah.
their names, they're not responsible. If we
Yeah,
know who
sure.
they are, they're not responsible.
Well,
Yeah, agreed.
okay. Well, I reckon I could name a couple of people above Lord Schwab. You're
However,
talking about
I am interested in people like the perpetrators of 9/11, i.e. Comey, and people like that. Is it Comey who was in charge of
FBI.
where the planes were headed?
wasn't it Rumsfeld?
No, who was in charge of the to instruct the planes to do their
That was Rumsfeld.
Was it Rumsfeld?
Yeah, Donald Rumsfeld.
So I would argue that he is a dark occultist whistleblower, because it would take someone at a high level to
Stop
actually...
grinding my chair on the table.
It would take someone at a
But
high
again,
level.
we've heard his name. We know who he is. So
Yeah. But I
can he
was-
be that high up in the pecking order?
Actually, yes. Good argument.
Yeah, because I used to think that by default, all of these sort of key players would be what we would describe as a dark occultist. But a dark occultist doesn't just mean someone that's gone to the lodge and wanked in a coffin. It doesn't really just mean someone that's been there when something else happened.
No.
It means someone that's a manifester, a practitioner, someone that is setting out plans, laying down things that are going down the pyramid and then manifesting themselves into physical reality, rather than being a part of the structure and taking an order from the dark hooded figure at the lodge or whoever, you know. So it's an interesting thing to talk
Because
about.
I don't personally think Bill Gates is that hard. Someone fucking pied him back in the 90s. Someone, 3 assassins with pies got the guy.
I think
He's
Bill
not
Gates
that
is a
protected, mate.
supremely feeble, physically
How long do you
feeble
think he'd
individual.
last in jail?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't think he's that.
No.
He's that. If he was that important, he would have been protected. There was no way someone could throw pies in his face walking in a courtroom or wherever he was doing.
Let's
in a
get back to
meeting.
the email questions, and it's sort of the same. Steve says, can we ask Mark Devlin, is he positive about the future, or are we literally doomed to a dystopian nightmare? Thanks, Rise Above.
It's nothing like some doom and gloom questions here, right?
Straight to the
I
jugular.
know all about doom and gloom.
Straight to
trust
the
me.
jugular, Mark.
I have to believe that there's a positive end to all of this. I've got a family, so I have to remain focused on an outcome that is going to be beneficial to humanity. But looking at the way things are panning out, I truly don't believe that they're going to be able to take this plan through to full fruition, because they've just made it too obvious now.
Do you think they'll get a bit in, Mark? Do you think they'll be able to get, like, you know, a V passport or something, like, you know,
They already have.
a little bit of control?
They already have.
I mean,
I like to
globally-
think there's going to be some pushback on that. We haven't had the summer yet.
Sorry,
we
that,
haven't had
that was
the...
just an example. Like, do you think that, you know, there's loads of parts to their plan that, you know, we haven't talked about yet, but do you think they'll get?
They
they're gonna
haven't
get
managed
bits
to
and
do
bobs done?
one thing consistently globally yet. Not even COVID at 1984. There was still a good handful of countries spread across
Tanzania.
different
Putin.
continents. Not just the African ones that lost their
No,
leaders.
Putin.
Belarus, Cambodia. Cambodia literally has 0 COVID deaths.
Some South American countries as well. I
Well,
believe, or
Brazil, Bolsonaro was not doing COVID
No.
for the first year. Then they had all those apparent, like, you know, mass burials, which all were shown to be fake. It's like what we showed about. I don't know if you watched the stream away down. India, apparently they're burning piles of bodies to such an extent that furnaces are melting. That's what the Daily Mail.
I've never
That's
heard
what
of a
we're told.
furnace melting. I'm a chef.
Look,
you know, I know
here
how
we-
ovens
let me
work.
find it. Let me find it. Where is it? The
Are you all right to talk about this, Mark? We don't want to.
Sorry, we weren't going to do COVIDism, were we?
Well, I feel there's going to be a lot of low-level politicians that might have been given the heads up that something was coming, but they weren't fully clued in on how
Yeah.
extensive it would be.
Right.
And there's
Yeah.
going to be people like this that are now starting to wonder
Who-
what's going
who
on.
originally
We
complied.
weren't told about
Yeah.
this. This is affecting my life and my family's lives now. I'm not with this anymore. And I like to think there's going to be some pushback from those kinds of people. Also in the mainstream media, so-called journalists must be starting to wonder what's going on now. They're not fully up on what the plan is.
Not like your
Maybe-
Piers Morgan. Well,
Look,
he's right on
in the
board.
Guardian,
Morgan's
sometimes
a key
says
player.
the enemy of the enemy is my friend, right? And what Mark just touched on there, I had this conversation with the missus the other week. I said, imagine all of these guys that are high-level civil servants and the politicians. They thought, yeah, they're going to do this for about a year.
gonna cream
We'll
it.
cash in.
Yeah,
we'll
yeah,
get
yeah.
some nice track and trace contracts. We'll get some really nice bogus PPE contracts. We're literally going to make millions. And then this will happen. But 12 months down the line, what they're starting to realise
Looking
is
so rosy now, is
the
it?
Soviet Union is a slightly little bit more all-encompassing than just rinsing the peasants for 12 months while you guys line your pockets. Little did you know.
Exactly that. Yeah.
Little did you know. The Great Reset doesn't have room for millionaires
So they-
and
they're being
bureaucrats.
played as well.
It only
That's right.
has room for the super elite, the what's it called? The was it not venture capitalists? Stakeholder capitalists. That's what they call it. It only has room for the stakeholders, and guess
The
what? If you're not,
peasantry.
you are the peasantry, yeah. So you know sometimes these
It's a
greedy
numbers
bastards might be our friends. The enemy of the enemy.
It's a
is your
numbers
friend.
game. You know, there's very few of the real controllers, the real architects of this narrative, and there's lots and lots of us.
Mark, what do you think's going on with the Queen?
I have no idea, mate.
What do you think?
I,
What do
I
you think's
wish
going
I
on
knew.
with the Queen in regards to the Soviet Union? Do you think she's been tucked away because obviously she knew what was going to go on? But do you think she's been tucked away, you know, out of the public eye because she's getting old? Because obviously there could be some fucking huge riot pushback that the.
Is she even
Well,
still alive?
I don't know what's going on there. I mean, a few months back, I thought she'd been removed one way or another, whether she died or whether she'd been arrested or just removed from the scene. She's been seen out supposedly in public recently at Philip's funeral and stuff.
She
even
supposedly
though-
knighted Mr. Tom, Captain Tom.
Yeah,
Word nerd,
yeah,
you've got
yeah.
to stop jumping in, mate. You're affecting the stream. I'm really sorry.
Although she did appear on a Zoom call the other week,
Did she now?
talking about the
Did
vaccine.
she? Did she?
We
that
we
was-
played that one, didn't we? We
that
played
was
that.
clear,
Did she?
clear CGI.
It was a
deepfake.
deep fake, wasn't it? Thank you very much,
And
Mark.
very
what,
much
and
deepfake.
like, what was going on at Christmas time? We covered it on the show.
Yeah, the Channel 4
With
deep
that
fake.
Yeah,
Channel 4
they showed you how it was done.
Come on.
Revelation of the method.
Come on.
Yeah.
Look at Lord Sausage
So I
Fingers.
don't know what's going on there. They've been using a fake Prince Charles. They've
for
been using
some
an
time.
actor.
For
Yeah,
some
yeah.
time,
Yeah.
yeah.
So are you saying that the guy with the really swollen fingers is not the real Prince Charles? Is Lord Sausage Fingers the imposter? Because have you seen the pictures of his fingers, Prince Charles?
I've missed that.
Right,
Get
please.
one up, get
No,
one
right,
up.
okay.
Oh, yeah, no, I'll get it.
You Jamie for me, please. So since we're just doing the basic rabbit hole assault course here, right? What is your thoughts on that guy who appeared last year who claimed to be the real new king of England?
Oh, Greg Hallett.
Greg Hallett,
Yeah.
please.
Well, I've
take
met
it
him.
away.
I've met Greg.
You've met Greg Hallett?
Yeah, I met
oh
him.
Oh my god.
I met him a few years ago when I was doing a presentation in Norfolk. I was doing a presentation based around my book. And I ended up, after the talk, in this house, sitting up late at night with Greg Hallett. And he showed me his alternative family tree.
Right.
And his claim is that the royal bloodline was usurped round about the time of Queen Victoria by the Rothschilds, would you believe?
Yep. Yeah, I know.
And
You're right.
so the family tree veers off in a different direction in terms of the true parentage and the true ancestry of everyone involved. So he says everyone from Queen Victoria onwards has basically been illegitimate. And nobody is the child or the parent of who you think they are. They're all having incestuous affairs here, there, and
Yeah,
everywhere.
but the worst thing is, I think that's true. I think that part of the story is true from my own research.